Three, two, one, and we're on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the second episode of the Door Unhinged podcast. Joining me here is Sir Joe I Am of It Came From a Box. I am a huge fan of consumer culture. I'm the kind of person who sniffs the magazine the instant I take it out of the mailbox. I love boxes opening, just the culture of it all. I like it. He has more Nintendo Switches than there are cases of the virus. It's absolutely crazy. I can't imagine it. Sir Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
No problem, dude. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm good. And what I like is my brain puts people I hang out with and YouTubers I watch into separate categories. Like they're these magical beings that I could never talk to. Uh, so talking to you is a weirdly magical experience because lots of these YouTubers, you reach out to them and they'll just say, yeah, no, I'll totally talk. And it's flattering that they'll talk to us mere mortals, I suppose.
I mean, really, it comes down to like it's geeks being geeks, and the only difference is that like some of us showcase it differently than others, right? So, um, I I don't think I'm a big YouTuber, but I don't know what would consider that be considered, right? So for me, I'm just a guy who does it on the side, and if I get to talk to people
Hmm.
in between, it's a pleasure, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to do it on the side. That's what the smart person does because you have that constant algorithm changing, and you have all it's like the weather, right? And you
Hmm.
have these entire channels just thrown under because machine learning decided to do something stupid, like, oh, you know that playthrough you did of Doom Eternal? Well, we think that's for kids now, so all that monetization or whatever, you just don't get that now. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of well, YouTube before money was a pure like a purely passionate kind of thing, right? You
Hmm.
wouldn't get into making a YouTube video or a channel unless it's something you were passionate about. And then when you throw in money, that's when things get very complicated because people leave their jobs, people stop pursuing careers, people stop, they focus on one thing. And anyone who is self-employed or anyone who doesn't have a 9 to 5 will tell you that you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So,
Yeah, it's it's funny. I had a friend of mine that said YouTube is so big now that if a friend of hers said that they have a YouTube channel with 17,000 subscribers, she wouldn't be surprised by that. It's uh,
mhm,
just
yeah,
that big.
yeah, it's very common. The thing is, it's because Google has staying power with YouTube, at least specifically YouTube. And I only say that because if they were big enough for them to buy, it's something that they're gonna continue to grow. And plus, I think it's honestly replacing TV. I work in broadcast,
Hmm.
and I literally I saw a transition from the companies I worked with from just TV to going on YouTube and getting more views on YouTube most likely.
That's right. I don't even know how I find out about new stuff now because I just never see commercials. The only
Hmm.
time I ever turn into regular TV is to watch the new episode of Better Call Saul. That's the only time.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
all,
I'm waiting for the 22nd so I could just wrap it all. They can watch it, binge it together. So,
oh
but
yeah,
I'm on your yeah.
it's a different
Um.
show. It's a different
Hmm.
kind of show for sure than bigger brother series.
Hmm. Yeah. I was gonna say when it comes to YouTube, do you have premium?
I do.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like after having for about I think it's over a year, and I mean I don't know how long now, but I've had it since day one. But I cannot imagine having YouTube without premium now.
Yeah, it's mainly for the phone, right? Because when you're on your desktop, you can just use an ad blocker or whatever. But
Hmm. Yeah.
that probably comes back to bite content creators in some way, shape, or form that I'm indirectly responsible for.
Well, for me, it's two thoughts on that. One, I got premium as part of like Google Music. I'm one of the small percentage of people out there who use Google Music, just
Mhm.
because I have my music and I don't need to, I don't do the whole socials aspect of it. So I just love music. I can upload my stuff. But then they added premium to it, which is just a genius idea because it's a great package together.
Yeah,
And I think they're going to keep doing stuff like that. But yeah, that's how I got into premium. And after having it, I realized, oh, I don't have to, block anything. But also by having premium, those YouTubers are still getting money from you watching, right?
yeah,
And as for the ad blocking stuff, I think that comes down to almost like you can sort of place that in with pirating. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
yeah,
was that person ever going to buy your product to begin with, right?
yeah. it brings up a very interesting question. You know, you had Paul Stanley on the Joe Rogan podcast where he was talking about just how much he hates piracy, and you have these kids that will, there's a big question of exposure versus sales and how much they relate. And I don't pretend to have all the answers, but there is
Hmm.
definitely a plus side to putting your stuff out there for free and just having it exposed to uh,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
space.
I mean, it's completely opinion based, right? Because like, you'll have someone who hates pirating, and it's probably because they have a company that could be bigger if it wasn't for pirating, or they have someone who
Oh
is
yeah.
directly affected by it, or whatever it is, right? I'm all for pirating. I hate saying that. I'll never say it. It's like it's almost like talking politics, right? But the
Yeah.
reason I'm a big fan of pirating is because the only reason I learned the software I learned when I was a kid in college who had no money at all, the jobs I had barely paid for anything at that point, and the software was just so expensive that it was known that hey, you have to pirate it. You're not going to spend that much money on a piece of software that you don't even know, right?
Yeah.
And but then now I pay for way more things than I would have ever been able to unless, I had that kind of beginning, right? But once again, like I said, it's completely opinion based, and there's really even the right answer could be wrong, like in my opinion, right? Oh, well, my opinion's wrong in that morally, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, it's just um, it depends on what you're talking about. I guess if it's a big corporation, they'll be more able to tolerate something like that. And at the end of the day, if it's something you really like, the true fans, they're gonna like. I got so many hours of enjoyment out of Path of Exile, which is a free to play
Hmm.
action game,
Yeah,
action RPG, and I ended up just buying some of the microtransaction stuff, even if it was a little overpriced, because I'm like, hey, I got what 40 plus hours of enjoyment out of this thing. You know what? I'm
of
gonna
course,
throw
yeah.
some money at these guys, but there's totally the argument to be made that it's not gonna happen. And I understand. You just that's people who never give them a dime. They're not evil. That's how the game was advertised. They're not obligated.
Of
But I
course,
just
yeah.
felt it
But
was the right thing to do. Yeah.
that and to tie it back to YouTube, like Ethan from H3H3.
Yeah, he's under fire for something right now. I didn't
Oh
look
yeah, I
into it
know.
too much. Uh,
Yeah, but
yeah.
the reason I bring him up is because like I loved the guy. I think a majority of people loved his content, right? When he was hungry, like literally and both, metaphorically. But like the guy would just create such good, simple content sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And people loved him for it. He grew, and then what happened? As soon as like revenue started to change and he started to make less money, and all these issues happened, he he walked away from the platform, which makes you realize that did he walk away because of the financial aspect of it,
Mm.
or did he just was he never this was never a passion project for him, right? And then you can also tie that to like Patreon. You could tie it to YouTube. The join button, whatever you want to call it, like being funded by your viewers. Um, that becomes a whole other thing where let's say someone watches my videos with an ad blocker. I don't care. I'm glad that they're watching my stuff. It's an honor for that to happen, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It feels
And
good.
but now you also have we live in a day in a time when you have streamers who are like literally talking to their chat, telling them off for not donating live on stream.
What
But
Wings of Redemption?
oh yeah, no, and way more. I think it's become very common on Twitch.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I never want to get like that, man. I get what you're saying, and I'm glad that you have kept your spark of joy. Like you, I can tell in your videos that it's like it's not so much a job. And again, if I used to have this one job where all I did was drive cars back and forth.
Hmm.
And even if I didn't feel like doing that job, I could go in and I could do it, and it
Yeah.
would be done. Now, if I become a full time YouTuber and that's something I don't feel like doing on that day, that's a hell of a lot. You got to put that camera in front of yourself. You got to pretend like you're enthusiastic. You got to get the lighting, write the script, get the product. If you have a sponsorship, you got to wait for their approval. That's a lot to ask. I hope
Hmm.
that I hope that I never get involved in one of these awful Twitter war YouTube drama things, because every time I see a YouTuber I like and they're on Twitter, just brings out the worst in people. I'm convinced, but you see these people just going at each other's throats. It's like, oh, look at this thing he said months ago. Look at this thing he did months ago. And honestly,
Mhm.
I'm not so eager to cancel people. I'm just not.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, you go on.
no, no, I was just gonna say, like, when it comes to cancel culture, it's like an extremely dangerous weapon to yield, right?
Yeah,
Because normally, if you go to prison, think of the worst crime possible. If you didn't get the death sentence and you're in prison, that's someone who's paying their debt to society. And the idea being that once you're out, hey, look, I literally paid with my life. I know I learned. Hopefully, they learned from what they did.
right.
But boom, your debt is paid. That doesn't exist in cancel culture. Like, you can apologize, but then you can apologize incorrectly, or you're gonna have to continue apologizing. My point is that, like, it's one of those things where you can literally be outcast, and that could be a life-ending thing. And that of course can lead to situations where you'll have like Etika, right? Where Etika sort of,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, he had no. And the thing is, to be completely honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of his content, but I appreciated his energy, and I knew that he had a lot of like people, and he was passionate about what he liked.
right.
But when that happened to him, I was like, dude, I probably didn't love the guy, but no one deserves that. So
Yeah,
cancel culture is a whole other thing on that end. But I think, like, at least specifically with YouTube again, there's a lot of vitriol behind, like, hey, now I have power, right? That's the problem when you show someone a number about how many
hmm,
views you're getting, your subscriber count, whatever, right? It's like a power thing. And then you'll realize that there's people who have power who never had it, and the way they deal with it is, it's sometimes really sad to see, and sometimes it's uplifting and amazing. And so it really depends on the situation and that person's life, where they're at and where they're going and all that stuff. So
hmm. And you bring up a lot of good points. It's like, with Etika, I admired that in an age where people are so scared of what they say, he would like just, I don't know, throw his porn history out there, and uh,
yeah.
he would do all this crazy stuff. And I loved his sense of humor. I know he went too far sometimes, but
Hmm.
it really is a tragic tale of just letting that toxicity get to you. And I hope that other YouTubers can glean from that tragedy. And I'm sorry that his pain was so bad that he felt the need to end his own life. And I also agree with your point where with the numbers game, where when something is on the internet and it's just written down, it seems like it has more power than it actually does. You could do the
Hmm.
right
Yeah.
thing for years on end, and then you accidentally do one wrong thing and it's all over. And not only that, but lots of these people fall into these famous positions. Like, look at Wings of Redemption. They fall into these famous positions where they have lots of influence and they don't know how to handle it. They have all these
Yeah.
people on the internet. You don't got to wait for someone else's turn to talk. Everybody can talk at the same time in that comment section. You could make a video about Switch unboxings. By the time you get to the fourth comment, it's just a shit show. People are
Yeah.
coming at your throat. It's crazy.
I mean, I think, well, I will say this. I was surprised when I first started YouTube, as to how many positive comments I got. Because normally, like a decade ago, YouTube was like, it was the every joke about the comments was the same thing, which is like, oh, you should see the joke. That's the normal comment in YouTube. That's the, whatever, right? But
Yeah.
it's changed since then. And it was surprising to me because I didn't get a lot of hate. Normally you'd get, like, oh, this guy sucks, or, like, and that kind of, that comment in a much worse way, right?
Yeah.
And I think the percentage of comments that I got that are negative, at least, are probably, I mean, less than 1%. And which is extremely surprising, because I actually like really, big attacks and comments like that, because then I can use them in my videos to just, randomly show them, and it's hilarious. But
Oh yeah, what was that
it,
one video where there was a Switch dock that was doing that, and you posted a GIF of the Simpsons mob for a second because it
oh
was
yeah, yeah,
frying
yeah.
people's Switches?
Yeah, yeah, which is funny because that's a whole other thing. And really, it comes down to, like, at least in that situation specifically, it comes down to, like, am I an engineer who can literally take this product apart, test it out, and then let you know that it's this, or am I someone like the average Joe who's using this product, testing it out, and sharing his experience along with giving you a PSA after, what I read online, right? Because
Right.
that's literally what it is. That's where I come down. I'm not an engineer. I'm not someone who can do anything else but reach out to these people and, these companies in email and try to figure out, hey, look, there's a lot of people who are upset about this. What are your thoughts on it? And then just share that in a video, right?
Yeah. And that can put you in a tough position because you want to maintain that reviewer integrity. You want to give an honest review, but at the same time, there must be that guilty feeling of, oh man, I'm throwing this company under the bus. I'm doing this. But again, I imagine that comes with it a sense of guilt
Hmm.
but
Well, I
it's
mean,
important to stay
my
vigilant.
my thing is when I started this channel specifically, and I don't know if it's because I'm a father, but when I started it, I was a dad. I wasn't, single at that point,
Mhm.
but my mentality was like, I want anyone to be able to listen to the content that I make, to watch the content I make. And that, of course, meant, you change your language, right? And by doing so, like my natural language has changed as well in that way. And the reason I bring that up is because that's about reach. Like, who am I trying to reach, right?
Right.
When it comes to products, like I don't consider myself like a reviewer as much, and I do. I spend tons of time with these products, but sometimes you'll notice that my wording is like very much like, "Hey, this is my experience with this thing." Because the
Mhm.
truth is, like, some of these products would take. What if a controller I have broke a year in, right? Like a year after use. Then I have to judge, hey, look, is it a bad product because it broke in a year? Is it a bad product because, it only lasted a year? Or is that something I should bring up anymore, right? So there's a lot that goes into reviewing, but at the same time, I'm not a Kotaku, I'm not a Gizmodo, I'm not, like The Verge, right?
Mhm.
I think it's very important that we sort of separate ourselves from someone whose job it is to look at this and give you like a completely well thought out review on it. Or if I'm someone who says, hey, look, I got this thing, I think this thing is awesome and I just wanted to share it with you guys. Or, hey guys, I bought this with my money and I'm going to return it because I think it's pretty crappy and whatever it is. um, but yeah, that's my mentality when it comes to at least
Mhm.
how I check out product.
Yeah, that's a reasonable mentality, but there is a man. I keep saying, this is going to be a nightmare
No
to
problem.
edit. uh,
No, it's fine, you'll know when. That's a good thing.
yeah, there is a just a basic mindset across different mediums. Like you might not be able to take a computer apart, put it back together, but at the end of the day, you know how to review whether a computer is good or not. You may have never
Mhm, yeah.
created a video game in your life, but you can separate the gameplay from the sound, from the cinematics. You could deconstruct each of those on its own, determine whether they're good. Of
Yeah.
course, it helps. It gives you some sympathy. It gives you some experience and knowledge to have done that
Hmm.
yourself. But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, a critic's job is to be a critic, even if they don't know the entire process.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's also different. For example, like I always have this conversation about movie reviews because I'm a massive movie buff. Like I love movies. I studied film, but I don't talk about it in a very artsy, over the top way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'll just tell you, dude, I love that movie. I love that movie. Why? Because of this, because of that. And I didn't like this. I didn't like that. Right? Like I'm very simple about it. But
Right.
and I do have friends who will sit down and talk to you a full day about the symbolism and the meaning behind some of these movies.
Yeah.
But I'm very much about the entertainment aspect of it, right? And of course the artistry behind it, because I did go well, it's an art college, and I do love the art and the idea behind how things are made. But the reason I bring up movies is because you'll have a lot of people who are extremely passionate and well spoken about these things, and that becomes like a very tiny part of them, of their lives, that they wish could be bigger. And the reason for that is because the majority of people aren't as complex, aren't as deep about those things. So that's also
Right.
goes into, like, when I do videos, sometimes I can talk about a product, the ins and outs of a product, and what I hate how it feels on my left hand and compared to my right, whatever it is, right? Those kind of little details. But there's people who don't want to know all that stuff. So I'll juggle a video that's like very detailed. Like, the Steam controller.
Yeah.
I did a 3-part series, a 3-part review of that controller because I loved it. I think there was a lot there. But the problem is that I realized I got no views because it was so complex. And most people just want to pick up a controller and play.
Hmm.
And no one cared that, hey, look, I'm going to walk you through everything you can do with this. And I tested it out in every way. I played World of Warcraft with it, something so
Wow.
complex on a controller. And I told you how you can use this, for specific games or whatever it is. But I got all into it. And then I realized I got no views because not everyone cares about those kind of details. So I have to juggle the how, what details can I bring to the table that other similar YouTubers didn't bring to the table, and how can I do it in a way where I'm not like, writing an essay, right? Like those, those
Right.
huge YouTube essays. So
Right. That reminds me of one of Pixar's rules for filmmaking is what's fun to do as a filmmaker isn't as fun to just view as an audience. And you could have
mhm,
poured your heart and soul into those Steam controller videos, and I'm sure they were very good. But at the end of the day, what people want to watch is Switch accessories. You're like, God fucking damn
yeah.
it. I'm so tired of these goddamn Switch accessories. I've reviewed 40 of these bitches. We should be done with them. Uh,
Oh
and
yeah, trust me.
every time you post them, they get 40 million views. And it's like, okay, I
Oh
guess we're
yeah,
doing this. And then you
it's
get
funny.
in contact with each manufacturer. You're like, you guys got to make more of these because I've reviewed every Switch accessory there is.
Oh yeah, trust me. That comes down, but at that point you get into the niching down thing, right?
Right.
Like I started the video, my channel started off, and one of the things that got a lot of views were keyboard reviews, like because I love keyboards,
Yeah.
and I could talk about them a lot. But then I realized all I was doing, like I think it was like maybe a year or 2 years in, I was like, I'm just doing too many keyboard reviews. Because then I realized the language was the same, even though like let's say most new keyboards, they don't do that much more different than the previous versions.
Oh, yeah.
So but that's not content. If I made a video saying, hey man, this keyboard is awesome, it's all we loved, but it has this, that, and that's new, and I like this and I don't like that, that's not enough. You need to have a full review, because they look up reviews, they don't look up what's new, right?
Hmm.
So I went from keyboards to like, hey, what else do what? Because I'm spending my money on this stuff, and I'm like, what is it that I spend a lot of money on? And it's always been like accessory related things. In other words, like something to improve on what I have, right? Like for example, my computer like is probably like almost 2 generations old on the video card, and I've been trying to upgrade it for the longest time. But what I do instead is I buy accessories to like make this setup way better. I got a
Hmm.
better monitor, I got a better mouse, better keyboard, whatever. Now anyone who sees it, they're like, dude, this is crazy, this looks awesome. And I'm like, dude, that computer is really, really old. So
It's a really old. It's a computer from the prehistoric era with
oh, yeah,
the
it's a
most
Packard
high
Bell.
high tech accessories. I know exactly what you mean, but my excuse for it is that I'm not a computer surgeon. I don't trust myself to take that motherboard out or that graphics card out and change it.
Hmm.
So I can only do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I used to build them, and then the problem is that because of work, I would randomly have an issue pop up, and then it would affect my work. And then instead of working, I'm spending 2, 3 hours troubleshooting. So now I'll go to like, people who actually know what they're doing, and you'll get your computer, with like a certificate that this many engineers looked through it and did this specifically and that. And if there's an issue, I just call them and they resolve it. Doesn't mean I don't, that we don't know about computers. It's just that it really depends on what your use case is. If it's a
Mhm.
hobby, hey, I mean, if you lose time, it's no big deal. But if you want to make money through with this, then it becomes problematic.
Yeah. I have a friend whose his entire life is building PCs, and I admire, like, to me a computer is just this big complicated beast that I understand 5% of, and I use it to play Monster Hunter. And then when I'm done with that, I'm like, guys, it's slow, what's wrong? And then they'll go in, they're like, look, you're seeding illegal movies to like 9 other countries. And then they'll fix
Yeah.
it, and I'm like, oh geez, I don't know how I did that, but okay, thank you for fixing it for me. So
Dude, get a virtual box. Virtualize it. Virtualize the whole thing. No, that's a whole
yeah.
other conversation. But yeah, dude. I mean, that's. I honestly feel like that's gonna go away. By the way, like, I mean,
Really.
it doesn't take a lot to imagine a future where that whole aspect of building computers is gone, like completely. And I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, that doesn't look like next year, 5 years, a decade. That could probably be 30, 50 years or something like that. Or depends on politics as well. But I think people are thinking too small, where they think, oh, the next graphics card is going to be more powerful and more RAM and more hard drive space and faster than an SSD. You know what I mean? Like all those kind of
Yeah.
things. That's a very simplistic way of seeing what should be in our heads more of a remote computing aspect, right? Where it's like, hey, look at my tablet. My tablet is this transparent piece of glass. where it actually projects the graphics, of my, it projects the display from a server in a, from one of Google's servers, right? In other words, Stadia, but instead of games, it's literally your remote PC, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
Stadia, whatever.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, I love Stadia, and as
mhm.
many people that hate it, I actually love it.
It is far from perfect, but the
Hmm.
fact that a phone can run Mortal Kombat 11 and not have the phone like heat up to the point you can cook bacon on it.
Oh yeah,
I saw that
it's
and I
crazy.
was yeah, I was like this is the future. When we get there, this will
Yeah,
be insane.
exactly. That's it though. It's when we get there. Just as a quick like use case. Yesterday it was like I couldn't sleep. It was like 3 a.m. and I just picked up like the Stadia controller with the claw, and I was using my old phone on, not my current Pixel 4, but like I think the Pixel 3, right? So an old phone on, I believe it was like 24% battery, and I was like, "Oh dude, can I play with this?" I could. So I just hooked it up to the claw, started playing, and I played I think probably an hour and a half. And that whole time I kept checking the battery, because if that was running on my phone, that would have been dead.
Yeah.
My phone would have been dead probably 10, 12 minutes in with something that's processing, those kind of graphics. But I managed to play for over an hour when my phone was at 24% battery, and the graphics just looked gorgeous. There's no overheating, no nothing. But once again, it's the specific situation. I'm a Google guy. I have all their crap, and I have a great internet connection and a great router, modem, everything. Right?
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around because whenever I'm playing, like if I'm playing The Witcher 3, if I'm playing GTA 5 or something crazy on my computer, I always just out of habit, bend over and feel the top of my tower to see how hot it's getting.
Yeah. Or
And
listen to it.
yeah, it's crazy. It truly is.
Yeah. No. The thing is, as soon as you figure out a PC that just like it's awesome, it'll last 3 to 5 years. We're pushing tech that is trying to be past those 5 years, right? So it's like, oh look, like even in Minecraft, Nvidia just hooked it up with like crazy lighting now, and it's like, oh great. No, that's like an
Right.
old, something that older tablets, older computers can't handle now, right?
Exactly. And I think we're at a point where games aren't really going to get much better looking. It's going to mostly be how many particles can we have? Can we keep the frame rate going even when it's beautiful? Can we have the draw distance like absolutely insane? It's going to be more about performance while it's gorgeous instead of just either it looks like PS3 and it has 60 or it looks past that and it's
Mhm.
30.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just playing Black Ops 1 because of the zombies, right? Like, I don't know why. I just randomly installed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have like an ultra wide 3840 resolution, like monitor that runs at 144 hertz. And I was so just in shock of how beautiful that, any kind of game is when it can run at 144 hertz.
Right.
It's just, there's something so smooth and realistic about it, right? And but once again, that comes down to performance. And I feel like, can 3D get better? Yeah, I mean, if you watch like Toy Story, have you seen Toy Story 1 recently?
No, but I know that it hasn't aged well for
Oh
sure.
yeah, it looks awful. It just looks really bad. But a lot of things that look great are stylized games, right? Like you'll have a stylized game that will last,
Yeah.
our lifetime, right?
Yeah. Wind
And
Waker will look good 20 years from now.
oh yeah, I mean, I recently played it, the remastered Wii U version. It's gorgeous. It's just
Yeah.
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and the game that definitely didn't need a remaster for how good looking it still looks.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, is I think that's the mentality I'd like to see people approach, right? Approach with, because if it just comes down to like, hey, look, the game's okay, but like, look at the graphics. You know what I mean? That's how you get what is it? Oh goodness, the test bench. Or what's it called? Oh crap, I forgot. I completely forgot. They're remastering it, and it's coming to the Switch too. I forgot.
What, Crisis?
Oh yeah, Crisis. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They'll
but
finally
it's like,
put the memes to the tests where it's like that. It's that the biggest pinnacle you can achieve is can it run Crisis?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is like with Crisis, even like when I built the computer that can run that game, I was like, yes, I did it. And then I played that game and I was like, this game's all right, I guess. And that's it. I can't even remember it, right? But that just goes to show that it's, people remember it for pushing the benchmark, right? Like pushing the graphics to this whole new level.
Yeah, it doesn't even. Yeah, it's definitely a gameplay first mentality, which is what I like about Nintendo. Crisis 2, it can be in every single meme talking about pushing graphics to the farthest that they can go. But at the end of the day, you play it, you're like, it was okay.
It comes down to gameplay. I mean, that's everything. And that's
Yeah,
also, by the way, why I'm so heavily dedicated to like both the two things on my channel, like the games behind them would be PC gaming and Nintendo. Those
yeah,
are pretty much the two that I've stuck to this my whole life.
yeah. I bought that I bought the Satisfy grip because I think it was from your video, and I got my
Yeah.
little cousin the Moomba case because of your video. I saw it and
Oh yeah.
I was like, man, if he can destroy that Switch while it's in that, he's got to be hella strong because that thing looks like it can survive any fall possible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, dude, I love the Satisfy grip. I think, well, the problem is that, like, it comes down to hand size. Like, my wife doesn't like it, but that doesn't make it a bad product. It just means that, like, hey, you got to keep in mind that, and that's why I'll always say, hey, look, I have big hands, but I love the thing because it fills your hand, so it doesn't feel like you're really, pressuring and holding something tightly, and that's I think how you get that discomfort with time.
Mhm.
And the other thing for the Moomba cases, that's the one that I use for my kids because that thing falls over a few times and you hear the grip, like, that rubber hitting the floor kind of thing. And dude, yeah, I love, that's why I use those things. And, it's tough because I'm like, should I say that I like this because I like it or because I know my kids won't break something too, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the best of both worlds, and it kind of
Hmm.
comes back to what you were saying earlier, where when you're reviewing a product, you want to keep a general audience in mind. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's
Yeah.
and I still just like Satisfy because it has actual grips. By the way, to anyone watching, this is not sponsored by Satisfy or anything.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna just stroke them, just like turn my face to the camera like that's why you should buy Satisfy.
Oh, dude.
It's
Dude,
just
have you heard Review Tech USA's sponsored videos with that?
do you have one of these? Do you have uh man, Review Tech USA? I love him. I've
Yeah.
contacted him too.
Yeah, I love the guy too, but I think Richard has this thing where like he'll make an ad that looks like it's out of the 90s, where he'll smile looking at the camera with, a normal smile. Like if someone said smile, and he'll hold the product up. And I'm like, that is as classic an ad as you can ever ask for. Once again, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. I just, there's something funny there.
Yeah, there is. It's I have there's two different kinds of YouTubers in my opinion. You have you have these really in-depth people, kind of like your channel, they get into what kind of plastic it is, and then you have like people like Rich where it's like you're talking to your friend, he's kind
Yeah.
of talking in broader strokes, but you trust him. You've listened to him for a while.
Yeah.
And I love Rich's channel. I feel like he gets caught up in just trying to appease his viewers too much. I think he like said something political recently and then he had to
Yeah.
apologize for it. And I get it. I can't imagine just having a whole community come down on you like that. But
Yeah, that's the problem with
yeah.
politics. That comes down to politics, dude. Because the thing is, 30 years into my life, it clicked. It clicked, and I understand it. And the thing with politics is that it's completely unique per every single person.
Mhm.
And like you'll see that person who voted for this person because of hey, they're struggling with these problems, and that's the only person who wants to address those problems. Does that make that person a bad person because they have their own opinion, their own vote? And that's why like I'll hear people all the time bring up random politics that I disagree with, or but I don't really care, and I'll just change to another channel or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, politics to me, that's I'll never bring it up, and I hate that mentality of like our country has we're at that point where I need to talk about politics. Remember the Casey Neistat situation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
I
wait, no,
don't
wait, no,
think
I don't.
no
Casey Neistat,
he
he's that vlogger, right?
yeah, he's the vlogger, but at one point he just made a video where it's him on camera deadpan saying, I never talk about politics, but our country's in a place where we have to. And well,
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, then no one's going to, just the thing is, your opinion on something is your opinion on that thing. Yes, I'm sure you'll probably have some people who agree with you, and you'll have some people whose mind you'll change. But I really doubt that people are looking to a vlogger to give you, hey, look, because his situation is so different from yours, right? Same with like, Review Tech USA. It's like this is how he feels about things, and he brings it up. And then the problem is that he doesn't realize how diverse the viewership you had is, right?
Right.
And if you ever find a way to crack that, it's really tough. I mean, I don't look at numbers anymore, but I'm sure, like back then, I would have probably opened up his social blade just to see how this is affecting him and his Twitter comments and all that.
Mm. Yeah.
But that comes down to opinion, because the truth is the reason we watch him is because we like him and we like listening to him because he feels like our friend, right?
Yeah. And it's tough. It's for on one hand you have, he shouldn't be bringing it, it's not really their place to talk about politics on their actual videos, like, what they do on their Twitter. They can voice their opinion, sure, unless they view it as
Hmm.
like a business account where they're only talking about their channel. But at the end of the day, I wish that more of us could just, like, for example, I got friends who like Bernie, I got friends who like Trump, I got
Yeah.
friends who like every shade in between. And I wish that more people could watch a content creator they like and say, hey, this person likes that politician. I don't agree with them, but I like their content. I'll keep watching. Unfortunately, we just don't have that enough of the time. They'll be like, oh, they disagree with me on this one subject. I won't even watch them anymore.
Yeah,
And
but I mean that's honestly what it is, though. It's because the thing is, you have to think of we think of subscribers as like a whole sum, right? Like the sum of a channel. So go to a channel, if it has 1 million subs, you're like, I got to get in on this, right? Because there's something here. The problem is that you don't think of them as individuals who are treating their YouTube channel, not their YouTube channel, I'm sorry, their Google account as catered channels, right? So think of it like the way I think of it is, if I had TV like in the 90s and I can choose just what I like, I'd have an awesome situation where I could just sit down and channel surf, right? And I think that's what we do. Those of us who have accounts, we build like a little situation for us where we just look at, what's the latest video that's out and enjoy everything, right? Now, the problem is that that looks like this. Let's say I reviewed a keyboard. Someone loved it. He's like, dude, I need more reviews on keyboards. And then he sees Nintendo related products. He's like, I'm out, dude. I don't, nothing against you. I don't want to see Nintendo stuff on my feed, right? And that's what happens with politics. That's what happens with, any kind of thing like that, where someone disagrees and they're like, yeah, dude, I don't care for this. I'm out.
right. And
And it's really that simple.
it's and I understand that for sure, because not every person has that obligation to watch every single video and then make a judgment call, because there's going to be videos you miss. Those people,
Yeah.
those viewers have their own lives. It's just this passive thing. They come home from work at the end of the day and they go through their YouTubers and they say, oh, hey, this person freaked out and started talking about politics. I'm not going to do research on every right thing they did and compare it to every wrong thing they did. I'm just
Yeah.
going to
They
say,
also
hey,
treat it like
it's too
votes.
much.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I mean, the best example, just look at what happened to Pro Jared, man. That was
Oh,
crazy.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
That was fucking
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But once again, that comes out to like, dude, like, like you
Like,
have stuff in your closet that you should have kept in your closet. Like
yeah.
the guy's a freak. And I was like, well, the thing is this, the guy's a freak. But
Yeah.
how many other people are freaks? We're all freaks. We're all
We're,
freaks in our own way, but
we're
we
all
just don't
freaks.
put it out there.
We're all
Like
freaks,
this
and we
guy,
all eat in the kitchen and we shit in the bathroom. We don't do both in the same place. That was
dude.
the mistake that he made.
Exactly, dude. Every single person you know or talk to has something that should not be shared in public, right?
Yeah.
There's and that's just like that's human nature. But the problem is that this guy was literally putting it out there, almost like he was
Yeah.
proud of it.
Yeah. With his
And then we
face
hit
on it.
that point. Of course, yeah. So I mean, at one point that was going to come out, and I think he knew it. But there's, he's just like, dude, I'm not big enough that it's ever going to be a thing. Boom! Look what happened. Like,
Yeah. And
now I can literally see the guy without thinking of all the penis memes that I've seen. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
just like all
I,
over Reddit. So I couldn't. No, I can't.
here's the thing: if some guy came up to me, it's just the madness of crowds, right? It's that mob mentality.
Mhm.
If some
Yeah.
random ass guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, Sergio I am is a murderer," I'm like, wait, he's a murderer? What do you mean? Well, I have the screenshot right here. It says he did this. I have this picture right here. He did this. You know what I would do? I wouldn't fucking just believe what that guy said. I would come to you. I would say, hey, dude, why is these people sending me these things saying these awful shit about you? What's going on, man? Are you okay? What's going on? But it's not innocent until proven guilty anymore. It is.
Oh, of
It
course, yeah.
it it feels so good to just be at this keyboard and roast an awful person. It feels so good. And then it gets likes and shares and numbers, and it feels good. It feeds that primal part of your brain. Like, when you see an experience meter fill up in an RPG, when you see those likes fill up on Twitter, like, oh, he's an offender, and I'm just gonna. People don't look into shit anymore, man. And I really hope that everybody reevaluates what we consider when it comes to having a perfect record. You could say you could have done. You don't have to have a perfect record. Like, maybe someone said the N word in high school, and that was stupid. Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
That's an awful thing to do.
Hmm.
But I'm not gonna. I can't give you a life sentence for that. I really can't.
No, of course. I mean, like I said, once again, it comes down to like, one, you have are you going to be someone who puts laws into place and you follow them and it's supposed to play out this way, and there's an order to things, right? Or are you going to be the one who's just like, dude, we're just going to kill you,
Yeah.
you stole, we're going to chop your hands off, like, there is such a thing as going too far. But and once again, this is you can go into the politics again, and this leads easily into the Me Too situation,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, look, if my daughter, when she's older, came to me and told me this happened, I'm going to believe her, right? And I
Mm,
think it's dangerous to not believe people who come out and expose themselves. And hey,
right.
'cause they can get killed, or they can get, there's so many dangerous aspects to it. But it's not just like, hey, everyone, this is what this person said. You do have to play it out in some way, right? Like, you can't
Yeah.
just go by the word of one person. So my point is that it's extremely dangerous, but that's the social side of it, where it's like there's power behind, being behind a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Where there's some people who are like, there's some people who are really sick in the head. And once again, this could be anyone, everyone has a certain level of it. But it's like, on Reddit, for example, where it's like someone did something stupid on Instagram or whatever, and they'll follow that person until they get that person's address. They know where they work and
Ugh.
whatever it is. And it may not be worth it, but they'll, call that person up. They'll, swat that person. They'll do whatever it is. Like, it's like you're not just trying to embarrass someone, you're trying to take it to a level where it's extremely dangerous, and it feels like it could lead to suicide.
Yeah.
So that's when I think it's sick, right? It gets to a point where it's like, that's a little too much, man. It's like,
Yeah. A lot
yeah,
too
I don't know.
much. And it's so easy to forget behind a computer who you're dealing with. Like, for example, you have those. I was really scared Pro Jared was going to kill himself. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean,
I
every
mean,
time that happens, I feel like, dude, if this guy comes out and he says, I'm gonna, he they killed himself, I wouldn't be shocked.
yeah, that's what happened with Alec Holoka, the guy who made A Night in the Woods when Zoe Quinn came forward. And I don't
Yeah,
want
no,
to.
I remember that. That was killer. But yeah,
It's
dude, that case was shocking,
yeah,
and the stuff she said afterwards was even worse. Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, it comes off like, wait, that should be something that should really make you reflect. But then instead, she's DMing people saying, "Good, I'm glad he's," you know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff
yeah,
happens, and I'm like, dude, like, people don't stop. People
yeah,
continue. Like, it's like you can't go on without social media, and you'll
yeah.
die because of it.
I saw screenshots of her saying stuff like that in DMs, but I'm not sure if it was forged or not. Although I wouldn't
Once
put it
again, but
past
that's what I'm
her.
saying. Once again, it doesn't even matter if it's real or not, because
Yeah.
people will instantly take it and spread it everywhere. And there was also screenshots that I think were fake that were spreading. Remember that one game that came out, and then the Epic Game Store thing exclusive started happening. Remember? There was a game that was announced exclusive. Like, it went from Steam Greenlight to exclusive for Epic, but they took a bunch of pre-orders or whatever it was, and they weren't going to give the money back. Whatever. The point is, it's a small indie, like, I think it's like 3 people or something like that who made the game. People destroyed them completely. They started photoshopping Discord chats with things
What?
they'd never said, and
What
like
game
it
was
was.
this? Was it this wasn't Enchanted Portals, was it? That Cuphead ripoff?
No, 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 no. It's like it's almost like a. Let me look it up. Let me look it up, and I'll tell you about it.
Okay,
But
that's fine. Yeah, no, I've heard this quote before: is if you don't put your narrative out there, they'll write it for you. And
yeah,
not all of us are fortunate enough. Like you had those allegations against uh what's that one beauty dude? That beauty
um,
dude that he's prettier than most women that exist. James Charles.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and you had all these people who were like, "Oh, I'm straight," but he tried to convince me to be gay, and he has the platform to defend himself. He has the
yeah.
influence to do that. Not everyone has that.
Yeah, and and that can happen. I mean, the thing is, this really comes down to like the fact that this is all on social media, right? And social media tries to act like they don't want to censor anything, but in my opinion, we will get to points where like Twitter, Facebook, pretty much any social, where you can talk in public, something's going to happen where that stuff gets hit hard by regulation, and it's just going to dissipate. Like it's going to be so difficult. You know what's going on in China, right? Like China is like the perfect example of like keeping your people quiet. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
like that's the whole point. It's like censoring people to the not censoring people, it's just making it so you can't have a voice. And the reason for it is because we're proving, I think, as a society that we have the ability to have a voice, and we have companies who want to give us the illusion of so you can say whatever you want. But then once suicides start coming up, and it starts making the news, and all these platforms start getting a bad name for themselves, things are going to happen. That's a lot of the stuff that happens on YouTube, the updates and stuff like that, is because something gets to the news. Remember PewDiePie? PewDiePie was like the kid trolls, and then the news doesn't take it as him trolling. They just say, "Look, he's a Nazi," and then what happens? YouTube destroys the guy.
yeah,
Why? Because it got to that level, right? And I think that's what's going to happen eventually. Like Twitter, for example, it's like, dude, it's so volatile on there sometimes,
yeah,
and their approach is like, oh, I'm going to block you, block you, block you, block you.
yeah.
But dude,
And
there's
they
ways
wear
around that doesn't do anything.
yeah,
And like, people spread, they'll if you block someone, they'll go crazier.
and
I've seen that
yeah,
happen.
and they wear it as a badge of honor. They'll make it their cover photo, like, "Oh look,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Donald Trump blocked me. Look, this
yeah,
influencer blocked me. They hate me that much. That's my new thing. That's what I use Twitter for. Twitter's algorithm matches me up with the exact opposite view, and I get to say that they're shitty, and they get to say I'm shitty, and we both forget that we're both people because we're not." Right in front of each other. We're behind these monitors. It's easy for us to forget and just get more and more potent and awful. And I
yeah,
think a problem with these headlines, like you were mentioning, was it's hard to make a headline for something that's a middle ground. Like
yeah.
you can't make a headline. So let's say PewDiePie does something stupid. You can't make a headline that he's level headed, and you can't make a headline. You can make a headline that if he says something like that might sound kind of alt
Yeah,
right
yeah,
in
yeah.
this weird way. You can make a headline like that, but you can't make a middle ground. You can't say PewDiePie was right about this, this, and this, but he was wrong about this.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, that's then that goes into another thing, which is like clickbait culture, right? Like, that's what we are. Do you have an RSS feed by any chance?
An RSS feed?
Yeah, where
I
it's
do
pretty
not.
much like where it's just like I have like Feedly, and pretty much what it is, it's you plug in all the sites you want to read, and you can categorize them and make them all neat, and then it creates one feed where all you get to see everything. Like let's say it's like every gaming blog, every tech blog, every
Mm.
blogger, or whatever it is, right in one stream, and then you just scroll through them quick to get through the day and see what happened, right? So the thing there is that a majority of the information I take in with that is through just headlines. And
Mm.
the reason for it is because I have 1,000 plus, right? So how am I going to get through 1,000? I can't read every single article. So, but that mentality is what happens with everyone else. Like when you click a YouTube video, it's the thumbnail. It's then you read the title, right? And it's your search results, whatever you found, right? So it's just like something quick that gets your attention, and that's pushes into a situation like that where it's like um, Nazi YouTuber is whatever, and then all of a sudden they never read the article and they never dug into it. They just associated PewDiePie Nazi, and that became the thing, right? Then he was racist, and then he was this, and he was that, whatever. And John Tron got the same situation happen to him too. It's gonna
Yeah.
happen to everyone if you're on the internet long enough.
Yeah. I think the biggest, you look at Angry Video Game Nerd, he's managed to skirt, I think the biggest drama he's fallen into is just saying that the 2016 Ghostbusters movie wasn't good. That was the biggest controversy he fell into because it was an
Yeah,
all
I mean,
female cast.
yeah, but the thing is, like, and then once again, that goes into the whole, like, what's it called when you replace an entire cast with women? I forgot what it was called again, but um, it, the thing is, I think it's you have to be a little louder. My advice for him would have been use the term "my opinion" because just by doing so, for some reason, it calms a lot of people down. And I only say that because once again, your opinion could be wrong, right?
Mm.
So if you hear that, it associates with, well, I don't agree with your opinion. But if you're just like stating something, I mean, not stating it, but like if you have a video that, a review or something, a lot of people don't take it as an opinionated review. They take it as this guy is just saying that what he's saying is a fact and it's out there and people are watching it. And you know what I mean? And it's the way people, you know, accept what you're giving them. And I don't. It depends because it depends on the situation once again because everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. Ghostbusters, I think that one specifically, I was like, I don't really care for it. But then it turns into, oh, you don't care for it because it has a ton of girls. You know what I mean? How about the other one, right? And then it's like, dude, I'm not even going down that. He wasn't going down that path.
Yeah,
I don't think he did. And
he wasn't,
that, yeah. So
but it was the shields that kind of just got
yeah,
made. It's
yeah.
unfortunate. It's hard to approach a movie with a cast like that without, kind of stirring the hornet's nest of people who would typically defend that.
Oh yeah.
Diversity, and gender stuff. That's all well and good, but it's hard to approach some of those films. Like if you want to say Black Panther isn't a very good Marvel movie, it can be hard to do that. It can be hard to do that, and people might think you come off as ignorant. Personally, I saw it. I thought it was a pretty decent movie. I thought it was consistent with Marvel's other movies. It
Yeah,
told,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. But if you want to like make a video essay on why you think Marvel's Black Panther is an overrated movie, people are going to come at you from that angle, no matter how much
Oh, of
disclaimers you put
course.
up there.
Yeah, of course. Really, it comes down to what you're saying, and so to sum it up, I guess, right? Because if you give someone an essay, they can simply just comment and say, "Dude, a white guy is reviewing Black Panther. I've heard this before." You know what I mean? Like that. They can throw whatever it is, and it's just your content's irrelevant at that point. Which is this stuff happens a lot, right? But it really comes down to like for me, and I associate this with the content I make, where it's how do I, because this is, I wanted to say this earlier too. It's like I have a thing where I'm constantly editing myself in the script to not bash a product completely. And the reason for that is because unless it's like, and I don't mean this against, Chinese people specifically, but a lot of stuff that comes from China is like stolen from another company. Like, Moomba, for example. Um, a lot of cases that are out there, protective cases, look just like Moombas. And that's because, and I worked in manufacturing, not specifically, but I've worked with clients who had to deal with situations like this in manufacturing. They'll literally steal your $20,000 mold, change it for nothing, and start making your product and selling it before you can. A
Wow.
known thing, right? That's a known thing.
Wow.
But it's very common for China to do that. And they'll, like they have, dude, you have no idea how my spam folder looks with just Chinese spam because all their factories do this. They have to make more money, right? That's just how it is. And it's the nature of the beast working with another country and throwing your stuff out there. So there's tons of products from China that I do not, I ignore completely almost because there's nothing unique or nothing there. But the products that I share a lot of the times, the little kind of indie ones are made for, like Satisfy, for example. You can talk to these guys directly and see that, hey, look, we just wanted to do something awesome to improve our experience. And of course, if we like it, we hope others will like it as well, right? So there's a whole story there. And then the thing is this, let's say someone uses Satisfy's grip and hates it. How do you bash that, right? To what level do you I hate this grip. Why is this why is it this color? Why is it this size? Why did you do this, etc., right? and you have the potential to damage a brand, or a company or whatever it is, all these people who are passionate about something. And once you destroy that passion, then who knows what great product they could have made next, right? So I think
Yeah.
I love the approach of hey, look, some of these companies will completely ignore you if all you're doing is hardcore bashing just for views, right? Like, that comes down to the Angry Joe situation, right? Where it's like he destroyed some game reviews, right? Like in some games via his reviews,
Mm.
and we love it. I mean, I still love the
Mm.
guy. I love his content, and it just felt fun to hear someone talk that way, so uncensored. But the problem is he's blacklisted, where he can never, test games out, which in a sense is actually probably fantastic for him, because you know his stuff is real that way, right?
Right.
And my thing is that I just do not want to destroy a company with a video, right? So in other words, like, what if
Right.
I destroyed Satisfy, and then it's like, dude, like, no one's buying their grip. People are sharing my video and saying how bad it is. And when, the mentality for me is more about, hey, look, let's weigh the pros and cons. That's really what it all comes down to. Like, if I had to sum up the way that I approach product, it's always been pros and cons, because everyone does it to a certain extent, where they weigh those odds, and not the odds, they weigh pros and cons, and they say, hey, look, are the cons like too much for me to accept, or can I accept these cons and enjoy this product, right? And if you look around you, you're going to find nothing but product that you had to deal with in that way.
Yes. And it's it's a fine line, like just like you said with destroying Satisfy, it's it's nice to see Angry Joe in character. It's fun to see him doing this thing where he's
Mm-hmm.
going over the top and destroying these things, but at the same time, you have to you weigh in how much influence you have, and you're like, hey, I don't like this product, but at the same time, I'm not an evil person. I don't want to see this company absolutely buried 6 feet under just because I don't like how a grip feels.
Exactly.
I'm gonna give you this honest review. It's this middle of the road review. It's not malicious for the sake of being malicious, and it's not bought for the sake of being bought. I'm not telling you a positive thing just because they gave me a lot of money. I'm giving you this honest review, and I just don't want this. That's how it is. It's reasonable. It's not evil. It's not good. It's just an honest review. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Well, the reason for it too, though, is because, like, at one point you're like, wait, if the company deserves it, you know what I mean? Like, for example, everyone hates EA, right? Like,
Yeah,
everyone, it's become like, oh yeah, I hate them, even if you've never played their games or whatever it is, right?
yeah, yeah. It's a meme.
And there's something to be said about that. But the problem is that I don't think people realize that the people who are shouting the loudest are the first to be ignored. And the problem there is that, like, if I, for example, do I want Satisfy? What's the outcome, right? Do I want Satisfy to become a better company that updates their product due to not just me, but multiple users having an issue with it and that they fixed it? Or do I want them to be a company that just poof goes away because they got destroyed by that review or something, right? And clearly, I'm not going to have that kind of power. I don't believe I have that kind of power, but some people do have that kind of power. Some people
Yeah.
care about, for some, I don't know why, but some people really care about what Unbox Therapy says about stuff. And he literally has the potential to destroy a brand. But a lot
Yeah.
of times he doesn't, because he gets paid and doesn't tell he gets paid. And I only know that because I had clients who literally told me how much he prices his reviews out to you. But
Hmm.
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing. It's hard when money's involved. It's hard to review stuff. Like you got Jim Sterling had was supposed to, I think he was supposed to review that Lord of the Rings game Shadow of Mordor, where
Yeah.
he took out a piece of paper before the review started and he said, "Here's all the things they told me not to say to you." And I'm like,
Oh
God
yeah, that's
damn.
great.
And on
Yeah.
top of that, you have IGN just bought Humble Bundle, and you just don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
It's
It's
always look at
morality. I mean,
yeah,
it's tough. It's tough because the thing is, the truth is, and I can say this only through experience, is that we work in a very gray area. Like, literally, like, I remember, like, doing my taxes, and I was like telling my tax guy, I was like, hey, they sent me these cases, that I did for a giveaway. Do I have to mark that in my taxes or something? How do I price? And he said, no, don't worry about it. But then in my head, I'm like, wait, was I supposed to? And he's saying, don't do it because no one cares enough. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, how straight do I play it when it comes to, like, those kind of little things like that, right?
right.
For example, like, I like saying, like, if I received a product, I'll say, because to me, the way it looks for me right now, specifically this moment, when if I ever receive a product, it's because I'll say, hey, look, we're working on similar videos, and if we can test out your product and it's something worth sharing, we'll share it with our audience. I don't take money for them. I don't take money for anything unless it's literally an ad, like a spawn, like Tom Talk. Tom Talk and Moomba reached out to me and they said, hey, can you feature all our products? And I was like, dude, I'm not going to do a video of 12 products like that. It's just, there's nothing, I wouldn't do that naturally. So it feels, and I said, hey, but look, I'll do it as a sponsored video where I can go
Yeah.
through all your, and I did that. And it's the first thing I start off with. I tell everyone, hey, look, we did like their products before and they reached out to us, and you can see it in our history. But this video is brought to you by, they paid for it, and this is an ad is pretty much what it comes off as, right? But clearly I'm giving you my opinion. And that's the one thing that I do disclose with everyone in email is like, hey, look, as a heads up, I'm not going to read what you tell me to read. I'm going to give people my opinion on the product. And I've lost sponsorships because of that. I had sponsors who are like, here's the script, like literally a script of what, I
Oh,
love this product. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to,
mm.
I can't do that. But
RAID.
yeah. But once again, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I can understand that some people will need that money, right? There's YouTubers literally right now who, unless they continue to make popular content week after week, will drown. Maybe that's debt, maybe
Yeah.
that's literally they can't afford it. And that's a position that I'm extremely thankful for not being in.
Right.
But I know not a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Like if YouTube just stopped, I'm fine. Like I'm okay. I have a life and career and all this stuff, right? But there's some people this is all they know, and that's when it gets really, very scary.
Right. It's a hard moral dilemma because it's like I question the legitimacy of this product, but that money would do so much for people who are just trying to scrape by on YouTube.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think some of the stuff I wanted to touch on that you talked about earlier was it's harder when you were talking about the tax stuff. It's harder to quantify when you're a YouTuber, right? Because we don't have products, we don't sell food, we don't sell like these physical products. We have these videos explaining stuff. We talk. And that's harder
Mhm.
to put into these categories of, what gets involved with taxes or any other thing. It's harder to quantify. That's why you have these people abusing copyright. They do copyright strikes and all that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that comes down to like you're learning as you go. That's what I've been learning about. That's what I think I sort of can say YouTube is like. It's really about like, hey, I did this, but then someone tells you, hey, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like I at one point I realized, like what was it? There's language that I'm not supposed to be using in a specific way, or it comes off like, I'm working for YouTube. For example, I'm not supposed to say I work for YouTube, but how many times have you heard YouTubers pretty much say that like this is my only job, right? And that comes off like YouTube is your, your boss, right?
Yeah.
But there's like, language and things like this that you have to learn and pick up as you go. But yeah, it's really this is new ground. A lot of this stuff is completely new ground. Like unbox therapy, dude, I'm telling you, man, like if like this is me pretty much bashing the guy, and I don't want to. It's just that I see him, I'm subscribed and I watch his content all the time, and I'm like, dude, there's no way on earth that this Korean company who sent you this product that doesn't exist online, you just found it and you're like, yeah, I want to do it. You know what I mean? Like clearly, this guy is making tons of money behind this stuff,
Hmm.
and there's no disclosure about it. I remember checking his description. I was like, maybe he's gonna bring up that they sent him this, or how, like, how did you find this? Where's the discovery at? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, but once again, I don't care. I don't say anything about that specifically because it's a gray area. Like no
Yeah.
one's going after him until one day, like maybe a decade after, when it comes to politics, at least, we get our heads out of our butts and we actually, we
Yeah.
try to regulate things so they work correctly, right? Because that's the other thing too, is that are people trying to sell you something because it'll make them money, or are they trying to sell you on something because they like the product, right?
Yeah. It comes back. It's like they don't care now about this stuff that he's not disclaiming in his videos. But the instant he says the wrong thing about Trump or Bernie or Hillary or any politician, people come back, oh, by the way, he was doing this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And it's like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
pointed
Yeah,
those out.
yeah.
Those are legitimate. But at the same time, you didn't care that he did those things wrong until he did this one thing wrong.
Yeah, of course. Well, once again, that comes down to like, um, is it is it legal until you get caught? You know what I mean? Like that's like once again, that's the gray area. But let's be honest, the companies that a majority of Americans, at least specifically, because that's all I know here, is that the companies that Americans work with or work, are employed by, they work a lot in the gray, right? Now, the only thing is when you remove the company and it's you on your own, you realize that everyone's doing this. A lot of people don't know when they're doing something wrong because they don't actually know the laws that apply
Oh
to
yeah,
them. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think a common thing
And
actually.
it's unfortunate. It's a hard thing to process because Blizzard, under fire for all that Hong Kong stuff. But at the same time, I can't really raise a torch to Blizzard and feel 100% okay with myself because I have an iPhone and there is a
Mhm.
lot
Yeah.
of you have lots of awful labor that goes into that. There is evil tied to so many products. You just go into your living room, I'm sure there's evil applied to so many products in there.
I forgot what my thought was on that, but pretty
That's good.
much like that's very common, that kind of mentality of like, hey, this is a historical record of, your channel
Yeah.
specifically. Like you saw what happened with him and the cases, the phone cases.
What happened there for
Like
people who don't know?
he talked about, like, he came out and he said he made a video saying, he made a really like over the top video saying, I always wanted this specific type of case and no one would make it. So then I set out to make it. And I'm like, okay, so he got into manufacturing, which in my head, I was like, that's a good investment. Like, if you can get into, like if you're talking about products and you make your own product, yeah, that's a good investment, a good way to, like, grow in that way. But the problem is that then the controversy was, wait a second, this phone case you made looks identical to this one case you talked about a few years ago. And it looks just about the same, and all the things you talked about that you liked, you like in a phone case, you mentioned in that video. And guess what? That video was taken down. And then the owner of that company talked and said, hey, look, this is messed up. This guy's selling a product that's just like ours, and blah blah blah. And then he's not actually making the phone. I think he's going on Alibaba and buying a bunch of, he's buying product at in a large volume. So when you do that, you can go and tell them to change things for you,
Wow.
because, and like, in other words, he's not actually making like the molds and everything. He's not going through the process. He found like a way to do it and save money. And he's like, look, I went through 50 revisions. And I'm like, dude, that's a normal part of the process. Like, but 50 is nothing. Some people will spend years going through revisions. And, but my point once again comes down to, he has a historical record of this stuff, and he'll continue to go forward with that mentality of like, yeah, I'm just about to steal a concept from something that I viewed before and put my name on it and my brand and upsell it, so.
Yeah, there is there is an incredible amount we don't know. I remember one time my dad said, "By the way, Carl's Jr. is owned by Burger King." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up." I was like, "No, I'm serious. Disney owns ESPN?" I'm like, "Shit, I did not know that."
Yeah.
You don't see a giant neon sign anywhere saying giving you that heads up. And as imperfect as Game Informer is, as imperfect as GameStop is, I do give Game Informer credit for having a lot of any article they have where they talk about GameStop, they have a disclaimer at the top that says
Yeah.
disclaimer GameStop is our parent company. I checked
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah, I checked the
at
website as
this
a
point,
bodily function.
yeah, at this point, I think it's legal. They have to disclose that, I believe. At least or if not, it's due to their like ethics when it comes to
Oh
journalism.
yeah. Oh yeah. I guess since it's
Because
like
the
not.
version
I guess since it's not YouTube, they just kind of have to do it. So maybe I'm giving them too
There's
much credit.
legality behind. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, I was gonna say, because then it turns into like another article or a news article or whatever, or a slap in the hand. But see, the thing is, when it comes down to like opinions, let's say, let's talk about reviews in that sense, right? Um, I don't want people to watch my videos and just immediately buy a product in my video, right? I mean, I do that, by the way. I do that. I'll watch one video, I'll be like, I need that. Buy it. Why? Because I know what I like. I know what I'm looking for. And I know that if it's something that, what's the price and what's this and what's that, I know what I
Yeah.
want at this point. But I know there's kids who either have no money or a small about allowance, or they get to buy something for their birthday, and it's like, oh, this is it. You get this one thing, and that's it. Because that was me as a kid, right? Like I didn't have money. I didn't have the stuff I have now. I'm pretty sure I have because as a kid I didn't have that much.
Hmm.
So I wasn't poor, like, but I couldn't get stuff all the time like I do now. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I don't want people to watch my stuff say, "Hey, I'm gonna buy that right away." I know they will, but I'd rather have people go, "Okay, so next go to this person and see what he says, or Google it, or search again and see what multiple people say about it." Why? Because in my opinion, that's what it should be. You should have multiple sources saying similar things, because then it's not BS, right? Okay, well, he mentioned it as well. Let's like the triggers on a controller suck. Hey, you look up, go on Amazon, search triggers, and then you'll see all the keywords pop up for all the reviews that mention triggers, and they're all saying the same thing, right? I forgot what it's called. Like it's like aggregating, multiple sources to get the same the similar info, right? That's what I want people to do. But the problem is, of course, that if I say, "Hey, I love this product, but it's not perfect," and someone buys it, and then they realize, "Yeah, it's not perfect. That's your fault." You should have said so in a more drastic way, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, as you could be as well educated and as experienced as you are, and then it's at the end of the day, you can only come outside of yourself so much. So it's like I'm experienced with Switch grips, with video games, with whatever genre of game it is. But at the end of the day, you should look at other people who are also reviewing this because it's good to get that wide spectrum.
And that's
It's
also why they say, it's like, "Oh, dude, you're competing with this guy, but I think you're a better YouTuber." I'll have comments like that, "You're my favorite YouTuber," or "You're better than this guy." But when they say that, I'm like, dude, I don't have to be the only one. I'm not eliminating the competition. I don't want to have someone
Mhm.
go, "Oh, dude, this guy's just better than me. I'm out. I'm deleting my
Yeah,
channel," right?
right. There's room for multiple people. It doesn't have to be one thing in every category that there is. You can have multiple
Yeah.
people talking about the same thing.
Oh yeah.
And you and I envy you that you say you know what you like because I can look up, for example, let me try and think of a good example. Okay, so, and this is kind of a tangent, but it ties back into what we were talking about a tiny bit. There was a Dungeons and Dragons beat 'em up on Steam, and I looked up reviews for this game, and there was like four different reviews that all said good thing. Like they said the hits felt satisfying, it had good light and heavy attacks, it had a good experience system, everything works. I fire that game up, it doesn't feel satisfying to me. It goes in my
Yeah.
backlog. I touch it for 12 minutes and I never touch it again. And I'm like, God damn it, no amount of reviews I look up will be able to tell me which part, that weird little part of my brain that tells me what's okay as opposed to everyone else, whether I should get that game or not.
Yeah.
Which is why I
I mean,
admire Steam's 2 hour policy with refunds because I can
oh yeah, of
fire up a
course.
game. I'm like, huh, that feels weird. I don't like this game. I
Yeah.
hate being picky, man. I fucking hate it.
Well, the thing is, like, I am very picky. Well, the thing is, one thing, like, it comes into who I am. Like, I'm a collector. I literally, I collect toys. I collect, I don't know. If you look in the office, you'll see what I collect. But the point is that I'm out of space. I'm out of room. So I literally can't, if I go into something new, I damage myself psychologically by not having a place to put it, and it goes somewhere where I can't fit it, and like it creates all these issues, right?
Right.
So I have those restraints. Now, if you're starting to collect, if you're starting to look, to, let's say, collect a library of games, collection, by the way, it's a sort of a vague term, because if you buy a lot of games, you're collecting games and you don't know it, right? But
Right.
like when it comes to games, like they're so accessible now. Like, dude, I have such a backlog. I have over, I think, I'm gonna check real quick because I just hit this milestone, which is like my I'm so proud of it. I have over 1,000 games owned on Steam now. I just hit that milestone.
Hmm.
And like if someone said, "Wow, dude, this guy has 1,000 games," and I'll tell you, like, I probably played less than 5% of that. There's no way on earth I could have played 1,000 games like that. Some of these games are made for Dota, Dota 2, like, like any kind
Yeah.
of, like, League of Legends, those kind of games you can dedicate hundreds of hours to. There's no end in sight for these games, like, multiplayer games and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah. I think
But the
that's
point is,
I think that's the
Yeah.
thing a lot of us are dreading about the quarantine is even though a lot of us have all the time in the world we want on our hands from this weird situation we're in, there's that ominous feeling of you will never completely get through your backlog. And that's a guilty feeling in the back of your head that's terrible to have.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's like books though. Like like I used to love literature and books and all the time. Like that's the only thing I did at one point in my college life.
Mm-hmm.
And I took what I wanted from that, and then I moved on. And now I'm back into games again because it's still an art form, and that's saying like it's like this. It's very similar to books in a sense. Is what I'm trying to say. But the reason I come back to this is because I have 1,000 games. I've played less than probably 5%, like all the way through. You know what I mean? To the point that I can walk you through everything. I played through the big ones, yeah, but because of this library too, I know what I hate. Not hate, what I can't play. For example, I love the idea of JRPGs. I love that there's so much story and so much that goes into the characters, but I have to force myself to play some of these. Like,
Yeah.
and it sucks because they're super popular games, like Persona. I started playing my first Persona game, and I'm dreading getting it's tough for me to get through it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
love the idea of it, but it's specifically because of where I am in my life and what I've gone through and whatever it is, right? Like if you have time to sit with that, I can only imagine it'll be an amazing experience. But I literally don't have the time to sit down and create relationships with characters and learn all about them. I just don't have that kind of time, and it sucks because if you do it in little split, the way I game is it's normally little breaks, and I can't do that with a game that has such a packed story like that. But now that I know, now I don't buy them anymore.
Yeah. I totally get what you mean. It's an intimidating thing. So I think of, if you think of Modern Warfare in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I think of that game. It's not this giant insurmountable task. I just play a couple of deathmatch games. I have a good time, and I got my money's worth. Then you think of fucking
Yeah,
Persona 5, 100 hours. You're like, this game could be knockers. It could look great. It could play great. It could be fun as hell. But 100 hours. I got two kids. I got a pandemic, a job. It's scary. It
yeah, of
really
course.
is.
Yeah.
That's why with Mario Odyssey they put so many moons everywhere. So with Switch's mobile capabilities, you could pick it up, get a couple of moons. Even if they decide to put the moons in fucking plain sight, like Mario can't trip 10 feet without having a moon in his goddamn mouth. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah.
but yeah, no, I definitely feel that, and I have been making a very conscious effort. Like I have over 300 hours in Monster Hunter Worlds. God help me, and every time
Yeah.
I'm playing that in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I'm saying in back of my mind too much. Every time
No, I'm
I,
saying a ton of terms all the time, by the way.
yeah, yeah, which comes back to what you were saying about reviewing products, Switch grips, where you're like, if you were reviewing video games, you could talk about an RPG game different than an action game, but if you're just reviewing grips, how many
Oh yeah,
different
of course.
times can you say
Terminology.
this doesn't feel right? But I
Yeah.
just got Neo 2. I need to play more of that. I shouldn't be playing Monster Hunter, but my brain's like, play more Monster Hunter. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, for me right now, it's been Overwatch, and once again, it goes into like the Blizzard
oh,
and China thing and this and that. But like, the thing is, my background in gaming. Well, actually, a quick thought before I forget. The reason I think we're in this place, when we're stuck, we're like, oh, dude, we can't play at all, is because also, like, when you're younger and all you had was a Super Nintendo and like 3 cartridges for the year, or you know what I mean, or probably more than a year, you're going to play those games, you're going to get bored of those games, and you're going to say, yeah, I played those games. But the problem is that we're ramping up. Like if you put a chart of like the amount of games available from the beginning, like at least let's say NES days, right? NES onward, the ramp is so drastic. It's so crazy. Like there's
yeah,
just so many games that literally you can't play them all. And then it becomes like when I used to love books, and I was like, wait, I'm not going to ever read all the books that people suggest, like the 1,000, the top 1,000 books, right? I'm not going to read all of those. I know I'm not.
yeah.
But what you do is like, hey, I'm going to go read those Goosebumps books I read when I was in middle school, because I was like, dude, this is short and sweet to the point. I love like sci-fi. There you go. And then I'll read like a really deep book that makes me think and evaluate life. But it's complete. They're two different things in the same space, right? You'll have multiplayer games that can literally take up your whole. I mean, like I'd say probably more than a year of your gaming time, right?
Yeah,
And it's
12-year-old me
Overwatch
didn't
or
have
Metro.
to. 12-year-old me didn't have to worry about, not even 12-year-old me, but 8-year-old me didn't have to worry about a fall Steam sale where 17 different open world games are on sale for $4 each, and then I get them in my library, and all they do is just make me feel bad for not playing them.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's the thing is like if I look at, I don't even see Steam sales about anymore because I just have to like shut down Steam because if I look, I'll realize, oh crap, I this is like a AAA game that I missed out on somehow, and then I'll buy it because it's on sale, but then it'll just go into the backlog again. But you know what? I think one thing that I was thinking of doing content wise, because I'm trying to think of like how if I'm gonna do like a Patreon style thing where I'm like, hey, if you guys want to help, you don't have to, but if you want to, this is what we're going to do with the money, right? One of the things I wanted to do was find a way to, have you heard of patient gamers on Reddit?
I have not, but Reddit does have some cool shit going on.
Well, it's pretty much just like it's like a forum of people who are like, hey, look, we're patiently waiting for these new games to drop in price on a sale, and then we'll buy it and play it. The idea
Oh,
being that like some games are just way too overpriced and some continue to be that way.
right,
So you just wait for a sale, buy it, and then play it. And by doing so, what you've done is you've moved the cycle back like probably you know 2 to 3 years. So there's constantly a new flow of games for you, specifically new, not like new releases that you're like, dude, this is awesome. And you get to play through some of these older games that are so highly praised, and you get to actually afford them, right? Because it's like buying at the full price. But the point is that like these older games as well have multiplayer that dies, and the problem with that is that it feels awful. It feels awful to play a game that, dude, I'm so in love with this game, and then you realize, oh, the multiplayer is dead because the game was, everyone moved on, right? So I like
right.
the idea of like sort of having an archive that you can revisit and do so not just by yourself but with a group of people. I don't know what that looks like. Most likely a community, right? And then that community plays those games and keeps that game alive for like a cycle, like a quarter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's something I wanted to do community wise, but I
That,
don't know. It's
that's
a whole other thing.
That's an interesting goal. I remember Demon Souls postponed putting their servers down for like 7 different times because just people
Oh
kept
yeah.
playing. And
Oh yeah.
one interesting thing I thought would be to try for like getting around to your backlog. What
Hmm.
if, because I think limitations make humans act in interesting ways. Just like, what if for a month you said, you know what, I'm only going to play 3DS games, or for a month you
Yeah.
said, I'm only going to play Steam games, or I'm only going to play Flash games. You put that limitation in yourself. Well, shit, what
Oh
am I
yeah.
going
Yeah.
to play? And then all of a sudden you get around to playing Bravely Second, which you never got around to
Yeah.
playing. Then you get around to playing Shin Megami Tensei 4 and Yoshi's New Island and all this stuff that you never would have done for some
I
reason.
actually I actually do that, and
You
not
do that
to
already?
every detail. I do that only with hardware limitations, though. So in other words, like in the last probably 5 years, I repurchased consoles like that I had as a kid. So in other words, like I bought a Game Boy Advance, a Game Boy SP. Like I just was going through like my favorite things growing up, and I'm like, I want a good version of that, right? Because they aged badly. So now I have a Game Boy Color. I have, like every version of the Game Boy Advance, every version of the 3DS. And what I did is that I got all the games that I wanted to ever play through, and I put them on, EverDrive.
Never heard of it.
So EverDrive is pretty much like, emulation, right? Like if you have a ROM, you can just emulate the ROM.
Of course, yeah.
So EverDrive is pretty much that concept, but it's being emulated through the actual hardware. So in other words, like if you try to play it on your phone or something, it may have issues because the way the consoles was set up before, your phone is trying to imitate and it's not working exactly as it should. So in
Hmm.
other words, EverDrive are like cartridges. So for example, the N64, it's a cartridge and you just put the ROMs inside and it imitates the actual loading and everything. So you're actually playing the game through the hardware the way it was meant to be. Now,
Hmm.
the reason I use hardware is because, for example, I'll go to work and I'll take a Game Boy Color. And the Game Boy Color will have only the games that I'm like, these are the games I need to play. People have said they're great. I've never got to play it. I couldn't afford it as a kid. It's in here, and that's the only thing I allow myself to play. And I'll take that to work until I'm done playing with it. You know, that'll look like multiple lunches or like whenever I have a break or something, and I'll just play and play and play. And back then, I mean, not that long ago, it was the Switch. The Switch was in my bag all the time, but because the games are more elaborate and more detailed, I can't sit with them as, you know, the same way I can with some older hardware like that.
Right.
But I will say the limitations is, like you said it, that's the best way to do it. You have to really just tell yourself what is it that you want to play.
Yeah. You get to see some interesting stuff because if I just give myself the world, if I just say, hey, you're allowed to play anything you want right now, I come home, I'm going to play fucking Monster Hunter.
Of course,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna get around to that obscure JRPG on my 3DS that I bought for $70 on some comic convention and then never got around to playing. I'm just gonna play
Yeah.
Monster Hunter like an idiot. It's
Well,
crazy.
the thing is, it's also because of the learning curve behind this. Like, you know, I'm a massive Zelda fan, like, and you know, like everyone else is pretty much, but and for good reason. But what I'm saying is that like I played Zelda as a kid and it blew my mind because I was like, I can be that hero, right? I think that's what everyone
Wow.
says, right? Like same with Marvel and stuff. I can be Iron Man, I can be Captain America, whatever, right? And now I'm like, dude, I don't want to be Link, man. Like, I loved Breath of the Wild. I probably
I
did, I don't
did
know
too.
how many
Yeah.
hundreds of hours. Loved it. But I will say the first few hours was extremely difficult as an adult to get through because I was like,
You
wait,
want
dude,
that
this game is,
parachute?
oh yeah, well not, yeah, but it's big. There's so much. And I was like, dude, I wish I just had like a day where I could just do this, right? But that doesn't really happen these days.
Hmm.
So it was a chore, but I loved every aspect, like, you know, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to continue to happen to everyone as they're, you know, as they begin to cycle into their 20s and the 30s and whatever, right? So I mean that's why easy mode has become like such a big thing where you're seeing like people write articles like why I play games on easy, right? And I completely agree. Like, does it really matter if you play something like, let's say Halo? Remember Halo? It's like, what does difficulty do? Oh, more bad guys. Oh, they take more damage. Oh, they're smarter. And I'm like, okay, so if you already played the game and you know the story, how is adding that kind of difficulty enough for you to make it fun? Because if it is, then do it. But if it's not, and you don't have a lot of time and you want to move on to another game, easy mode actually makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Burst through a level, get the story, you've played the whole game, that was fun. And that's enough for
Right.
people these days because that's all they can afford, I guess, time wise.
Exactly. And there's there's some shoot 'em ups that I like. And here's the thing, you could play it. Some of those games you play in normal mode, and you might have to practice for like 17 months before you're good enough to beat that game. Now, could I do it? I don't
Mm.
know, probably eventually, but
Yeah.
how much time would I save by just going one difficulty notch down and then I could beat it in a week and I could move on to another game?
Yeah, yeah.
It becomes this time thing where, yeah, eventually, yes, I could beat it and it might be very rewarding, but at the same time, I could probably still get a decent challenge and just go one difficulty notch lower and you could more easily manage other, priorities in your life.
Of course, yeah.
There was another point I wanted to get around to. What were we talking about? We were talking about, oh yeah, you were talking about being that hero. For me, I'm kind of more lame. For me, when I was growing up, I loved Mario 64, and then I'm like, all right, let's play Ocarina of Time. What is this? I can't jump.
Mhm.
This is stupid. I can't jump. I
Yeah, of
hate
course,
this.
yeah.
I can only jump when the game wants me to. People are talking all the time.
Oh yeah.
And there's that Eco-Raptor video that everybody hates about Ocarina of Time, where it's like he says you're being taken on a tour in Disneyland, and I'm
Well,
convinced that
dude, even
Nintendo wa-
Disneyland is
hmm?
awesome.
Well, Disneyland is awesome. That's a good point, but uh, he. I feel like Nintendo was watching that video when they made Breath of the Wild because everything Eco-Raptor complained about, they kind of fixed in Breath of the Wild. And I don't know. For me, I was just such a simpleton. I liked games where you could jump around and feel like an acrobat and just have a good time, and it was simple. And then when I played Ocarina of Time or other games, I was just like, I don't have
Mhm.
the freedom I want. This is complicated. This is weird. I can go back now and play them. I'm not even a huge Zelda person, and I like
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild. I don't think Breath. I think Breath of the Wild gets. Some people are saying Breath of the Wild is their game of the decade. I don't think that's a rational stance for most people because just the enemy diversity to me is just
Yeah.
crazy, and I'm tired of the shrine theme. I hate hearing that
Oh
goddamn
yeah.
shrine theme.
Definitely. It got, yeah, it got very, I mean, that's the thing though. It's like I think it's an amazing game, But I think the problem is that like when something's amazing, people focus too much on like, yeah, I have to give it a 10 out of 10. And the problem is that like you have to understand that not a lot of games will make it to a 10 out of 10, right? Just
Yeah,
because you like a game, for example, like Overwatch. I play Overwatch a lot. Like it before that it was Dota 2. And but Dota 2 is when I had time. But my point is that because I love these games and I play a lot of them does not make it a 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? Like it
right.
really comes down to like how are you actually rating this and how does that look like? But
That's
yeah.
why you see those reviews on Steam where they give a thumbs down and they have 3,000 hours on the
Oh yeah.
game. They're like,
Yeah.
it sucks. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you have 3,000 hours on the game, so what the hell was going through your mind while you were playing it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it is too. And once again, that comes back to product too. Like there's products that like there's people who come in and they say like, "Oh, but there's this new one. How about this one?" And I'll say, "Hey, dude, I like the new product that came out, but I'm using the old product." And that comes down to like me, like as someone who has like a closet full of accessories, like I'll come back to what's worked best for me. It doesn't mean it's the best product, right? Like for a bag, for example, this bag that I'm using right now for the Switch, it doesn't mean this is the best bag ever for the Switch. It's just the one that suits my carry perfectly, right? Like this is what I need to carry, and that's the bag that holds it. Doesn't mean it's the best materials or the cheapest price or whatever, right?
It doesn't mean that, but after I watched like 3 or 4 videos, I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, man, I really want a fucking Waterfield case. I don't know why.
Dude, I know.
It's just
Well,
the
I will
way
say,
it's just the way Joe
Waterfield
says it.
probably. Oh yeah, yeah, dude. The Waterfield is one of those my guilty pleasure, dude. Like, and it's once again, I didn't think people would care about them at all, but I was like, dude, I can't spend that much money on a case. I bought the case, and I was like, dude, I freaking love this case. By the way, I still use them, but now it got to the point where I'm like, dude, like the way I'm carrying right now, it's like tossing a bag and that bag is like filled with stuff. And I don't want the bags to get damaged. So actually, that's
Uh,
something I need to bring
yeah,
up because at one point you are worried about damaging an expensive bag.
yeah. I'm sorry. When you said carrying, I just thought of like concealed carry. It's funny. We're just talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
Switch cases. It's like, hey,
Oh, yeah.
I carry, right? What kind you
Well,
got? I got Waterfields.
well, I was going to say, some people actually, I'm sure, are looking for a bag to carry their Switch with a gun, dude. Like, that's guaranteed to
Wow.
be out there.
That's the,
That's guaranteed to
yeah.
be out there.
Don't misconstrue those two because those two are used for two very different things.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, it depends. It depends.
Depends on the person. Some people might, I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, it's that's the thing is because also that's the side of the channel that I got into was carry, which is like everyday carry. I got into EDC like I don't know when. I don't know. I don't think it was even really called that, but I really cared about what I was carrying on me, right? And it was because it adds something. It adds a little kick to my step kind of thing, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
I'm going to work and I'm bored to death. Oh, but look, I'm carrying stuff that I like, that I enjoy, and that enhances that day in some way, right? So
Yeah,
that looked like, wearing this watch or using this specific phone or this case for this phone or this new wallet or this whatever it is, right? And it adds something to the day, like like when you get a new phone and you take that phone to work, you feel like a kid, right? Like it's like, yeah, this is my new phone and I get to use it, and everyone has a phone at work, so we have so that kind of mentality to it. And it became a big part of it because of the channel, at least because people carry the Switch all the time, and that's one of the things I don't think people realize when they first bought it. I knew friends who were like, "Oh yeah, I only play on TV mode," but now I think a majority of people are using it in handheld mode. And dude, there's like Stadia, GeForce Now, PlayStation and Xbox have their version of streaming too, and people are playing on their phones because there's something so convenient about handheld playing, right?
right.
So
It's
it just sort of blends in
yeah.
together.
It's not a gimmick either. It's not just like some funny trick. It is a legitimately useful feature. And
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
have like the only reason I was able to point to in the past for, hey, how come you got this thing on console instead of PC? The only reason I was able to point to in the past was, oh, because it's a console exclusive. Well, now I can say, hey, I want anything to come out on the Switch. I want to be able to play it anywhere. That's crazy. I played Dark Souls 1 while I'm at the
Oh yeah.
morgue. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I replayed Dark Souls completely, like as if it was my first time on the Switch. After spending, I don't know, it felt like a year playing it in on Steam.
Mm.
dude. That it just there's the thing is, it comes down to like when you're an adult, like as in like you have to do adulting crap. A big part of this whole thing is micro gaming. I think that's probably the term or the way we can say it,
Yeah,
where it's like,
bite-sized.
yeah,
I'm in the waiting
exactly,
room at the doctor. I just want to.
sessions,
Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is, there's something amazing about it when you have suspend, like you can suspend the game. Because dude, I'm playing I was playing on my I was playing replaying Super Mario World on the Game Boy Advance, like that version which I really liked. And I was like, dude, this sucks. Like you have to turn off the console, and then if you want to play, you gotta power it on, start it up, and it feels like a minute feels like 5 minutes, right? So, but it's something like about you just suspend the console, play it again, and you're good to go. There's just something so quick there that it just feels like it's such a first world problem. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's like some people are like, dude, I need some kind of food today, or I'm gonna die. And I'm like, dude, this suspend feature is astounding. And so little things like that add a lot though to your, you know, to being an adult and trying to bring something that's stuck in your childhood onto your everyday kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And it removes that barrier because if you're, 20 something and you're coming back from doing adult stuff, you're coming back from doing work or tax stuff, you're like, you know what? I just want to wind down to play some Paper Mario, or I want to wind down to play some Sympathy of the Night. Then you're like, oh, I got to get that console out. I got to dust it off. I got to plug it in. Then with the Switch, it's just like, well, shit, I just had to press that power button. I could just put it into sleep mode and I could be right back to where I was. That removes so much. And this removes so much of a mental barrier in your head. It makes it so much more easier to just jump right back in like that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and that's the other thing too is that like you remember like how mobile gaming, everyone's like, dude, mobile gaming is where it's at, and then like every other country flooded the market with just garbage, even though it's pretty garbage. A lot of that garbage looks gorgeous, right? Like what's Raid
Yeah.
Shadow Legends? Great example, right? Like I'm not saying it's a bad game, but I can guarantee you, without even looking at the page, okay, that there's tons and tons of transactions behind that game. And
Hmm.
in my opinion, if there's that many transactions, it takes me out of the game, right?
Yeah.
And that's personal. But the point is that like the market got flooded in mobile, and now people who make games are porting over good games because we associate good games going to consoles or to those platforms that we know as gaming platforms. And then, are you playing a port on your phone? Is that port limited? Is it good? Is it fun at all? And you worry about that. But with Stadia, with GeForce Now, and of course, I forgot the name of them, but PlayStation's version and Xbox versions of that, streaming on your phone is like just mind-boggling. Like it's just one of those things where it's like you get the full experience. It's
Yeah.
not limited to like, oh, it plays like crap. Oh, my phone's dead because it took up all the resources. It just plays the game the way you would play it anywhere, in the consoles themselves. And that is the future that people were talking about. It wasn't all these the shovelware in the Play Store, the iPhone store, whatever it's called, right?
Yeah, it's the future, but not exactly how people pictured it. It's like you might have said mobile gaming is the future, but you know what? What you actually meant was that consoles have gone mobile. The Switch is mobile. I can play Red Dead Redemption 2 on my phone.
Yeah,
This is the future. Except we got to be connected to the internet all the time. People are
yeah. That
so people are so eager to bug their own house with Alexa. People are so eager to just stay connected to the internet the whole time, and it's like,
trust me,
man,
dude. Yeah, I live in a well, I think since high school I learned that right away. I was like, dude, if you're gonna sign up for these sites, you have to go in all in, knowing that like that stuff is being taken, like that someone has access to that. And then also, even if they're legally supposed to know, like why would they, if someone's trying to do something shady, they're not going to do it in a way that's playing by the rules, right? That's why, by
yeah.
the way, this is a great topic to talk about would be Vanguard. Vanguard
I haven't
or
heard of
Valiant?
that or any. Oh, you mean that Riot Games thing?
Yeah. So Valiant has this like, their DRM well, not DRM, I'm sorry, their anti-cheat system is called Vanguard. I believe it's Vanguard. I'm now confused a little bit, but whatever. The point is that like they're owned by Tencent, which is a Chinese company,
Yep.
and that software installs on the ring zero of your machine. So in other words, like it has complete power over your machine, right? Of course,
Hmm.
there's a good reason behind it. Like they have to have a good reason behind it, but it does not mean that it equates to being worth that risk, right? So now you have the conspiracy theory aspect of like, hey, millions of people are going to play this game, and they're going to have one of the most obtrusive kinds of anti-cheat systems in their computer, that at any point in time, if something goes wrong, all of those machines are compromised. So once again, it comes down to like, well, if you know and you still go with it, hey, at least you knew. That's where I'm at with that stuff, right?
Hmm. Yeah. It's hard to disclose all of that to the consumer. Like, I'm sure after this podcast, my phone's going to be like, oh, hey, you like It Came From a Box. Why don't you subscribe to this, this, and this?
Oh yeah, that's extremely common these days. But we accept it. Like for example, like the online, we talked about online for streaming. I that was my first, like I'm still working on my Stadia video since I got the box. I've been working on it. I don't know what's the narrative for it yet. I don't know if is what's my approach. Is my approach, hey, give it a try, or is my approach like wait for it to be better and then do a historical, go through like the ups and downs, right? So I'm still working on that video, but my in doing so, I've realized one of my cons was like you need the internet, right? And then I realized that because for example, if you go on vacation or something, oh, you have Wi-Fi and that Wi-Fi sucks or whatever, then you're screwed. But then I realized, dude, that only happened like twice, like in a year for me, where I didn't have like good internet to use something like Stadia or GeForce Now. And then I realized, I'm like, am I complaining about something that doesn't really apply to me specifically, right? Because if it applies to you, then yeah, you shouldn't buy this product. But me, dude, I have great internet. I have like a 1 gig connection, which makes something like streaming games. Should I spend thousands on upgrading my graphics card, or just play through my browser with graphics that are better than a computer could probably handle? At that price, I guess is the idea.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's sometimes you just sometimes you anticipate these problems and you're like, how much is this actually going to be a problem? Like, remember that
Exactly. Yeah.
you remember when the Xbox One was originally going to be internet only, and the I think the quote from the CEOs, for players that don't have access to the internet, we have a
Oh
product for
yeah.
them, and that's Xbox 360. They're just like
Yeah.
politely saying you could just play the older stuff.
Of course, dude. I first hated that because I remember I had a GameCube, and I was like, dude, my GameCube's not connected to the internet. I don't even know how to connect my GameCube to you know what I mean? And I was like, if they did something like that on the GameCube or something, well, that's when the idea like started to come up of like you need a connection to upgrade to update your game or do stuff like that. Then I realized even my Wii, I never connected to the internet. Like I remember like I think I did one time, but I had to change rooms for it. You know what I mean? To like hardwire the thing and whatever it was. And I don't know, but my point is that like back then I could see that as a problem because it wasn't the norm. But now, the thing is this, a lot of people don't realize that they're playing games online even in single player mode, but they just don't know it. And unless
Yeah,
it affects them in a negative way, they won't care.
yeah. I mean, I've got a wired internet, and when I play Monster Hunter, it still disconnects me often enough that
Hmm.
I wouldn't feel comfortable. Like, I can understand MMOs, of course, but it's a slippery slope. I like being, especially with the Switch being mobile. I like to have thing, that offline to lean on, where I know that it isn't something that is absolutely required. The online, it just adds.
Yeah.
It isn't required.
Well, actually, it's sort of funny because one of the videos I'm working on, I started like doing more how-to videos because the SEO is good for it, and by that I mean as in like there's enough people searching for it that it justifies making a video on it, right? Normally, that's the process I go through. I'm like, I want to do a video on this, and then I'll look and see what the competition has done, like not done, but like like scored. That's like like an SEO kind of score, right? Where I'll say, oh, how to do this. I'll look it up, and then the score is low, and I'm like, no one's looking for this. Why would I make this? I don't think it's worth the time to put into it. And I'm not that passionate that I'm like, I'm going to do it regardless. Sometimes I am, but the point is that there's some that are like, I have to consider doing. So this one, oh my gosh, dude, I'm losing my train of thought as I said that. What what was that we just talked about right now
We
before
were
this?
we were talking about crap.
You see what I
We,
mean?
it's crazy how that works, right?
How to? Oh, okay, yeah, always connected, always connected. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
So
internet. Yeah.
my buildup for it specifically was because, so the SEO is there, that some people are struggling, that they have a second switch, and there's all these issues that are coming up. Now the issues are that pretty much the DRM that Nintendo is using specifically is that if you have more than one switch and you buy a digital game through one account, that account can only be using that game one time by itself. In other words, if I have two switches and I'm logged in as Sergio on this one and Sergio on the other, you can't play the same game at the same time. Why?
Wow.
Because you only have one license. It makes sense, right? You get like the DRM aspect of it if you
Hmm.
lay it out. But the problem is, grandma and grandpa and mom and dad, they will not know what the hell is going on. They
Yeah.
do not care about that stuff. And the issue there is that those are the people who buy this stuff. Those are the ones who buy another console for their kids because they feel like, hey, look, they're fighting over it all the time, and there's a smaller one that costs less. But then they realize, oh, I need to buy this game for my kids twice, and that's $120. You know what I mean? Like,
That's right.
so. But the problem with their DRM, for example, is this: if I took my secondary Switch out on vacation, so let's say I went to Disney with the kids, and then I'm like waiting in line. I'm like, perfect time to use my Switch. I take out my Switch. I try to play a digital game and it says checking for an internet connection. And then it tells you no internet connection found and you can't play your game. That's happened. And it was the most infuriating thing because I was like, dude, I literally paid and bought for this. And
Yeah.
it comes down to a primary console thing. In other words, you can only have one console that has like complete power to just open games and play without a problem. But if you have a secondary one, it goes through this DRM, this wall where I'm like, dude, this is why people are looking into hacking their Switch. This is why people do that. This is why people break the stuff you make because it's just so infuriating.
Yeah, that's happened to me in a weird way where when I was younger, I would take my Xbox 360 to other people's houses and I wanted to play Castle Crashers, but when I took it over there, it wasn't connected to the internet in the exact right way and I could only play the trial of the game.
Yeah, yeah. That's the problem with always online, right? And then once again, you could go into the politics of it and realize that, like, at least in the States, the people who run the internet, you don't want being the people who run the internet because it's all a money game. Like, we should not be at 1 gig at the max. When the guy that installed my fiber said, oh, dude, they literally have a switch and they could just change you up to 4 gigs or, whatever
Yeah.
it was that he said at that time, which is literally, yeah, that's how it works. It's
Yeah.
infrastructure that can handle more than it's supposed to because you want it to grow and you make more money with it. But because it's money, then all of a sudden you have tons of neighborhoods who have garbage internet, and those people cannot use a service like Stadia, could not use a service like GeForce Now, right? And
Yeah.
it's not their fault, but it comes off like, oh, like it's like a class-based system or something.
Yeah, it becomes when money becomes involved, these barriers get in the way where
Yeah.
it's not the same as delivering groceries to your house or delivering something to your house or using physical products. For them,
Yeah.
it's literally just a switch that changes it from this worse thing to this better thing. They could very easily just give that to you. And that's
Yeah.
kind of, you could almost say it's kind of evil to block that behind this barrier when it's so easy on their end.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the business side of things, which I despise personally, especially because it's someone who, like, I'm a small business owner, technically, I guess, right? But the most common thing I get asked is like, "Hey, dude, your videos take so long. Why don't you hire someone to help you with them?" And it's like, I'd love to, but I can't afford to hire someone at the price that I believe they need to be paid. In other words, like, if I can't if I can't pay them what they're actually worth, I'd rather just not hire anyone. Yes, it
Yeah.
creates more work on my end, but like I would feel bad saying, "Hey, look, I'll pay you whatever this video makes." That video made $3. You know what I mean? Like these videos aren't like making thousands of dollars. It's literally like a snowball effect where all of them together make money. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. It's YouTubers, they do a lot of them do everything unless you're like Markiplier or something like that. You don't have the luxury of having a 5 person team. You got one person editing your videos, one person marketing it. You do everything.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's the thing is that I think people understand that as the hustle. For example, like H3H3 once again, like these guys did everything, and it was crappy, but like when it was crappy, it was good crappy. It's like the kind you wanted to see, right?
Yeah.
But now, they have teams, now they have employees and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually great, and that's I think a very American thing is to like start a company and give a living wage to people, like that kind of thing is like a privilege. And but the problem once again, it comes down to like you try it less. You're not working as hard, you're not grinding as much. It's like, it's a rapper thing too, like when you hear a hungry rapper versus someone who's like, now I'm rich and look at all my money kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't it seem like doesn't it seem like his wife isn't really enthusiastic about it sometimes? Like she's just kind of
But
along for the ride. I don't know. It's just the
yeah,
impression I guess I get.
I think she really just she plays off of him, right? Like that's what it's always been.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's like, hey, what do you think? And then, her reaction to his stuff is what's funny. But the problem too is that, like, for example, it comes back to what I said when we started talking. It's like this was a passionate, fun thing that he was doing. Like you can tell that even if he wasn't making money, he was doing it because he thought it was funny and other people were laughing with them. He made other people laugh. It was an enjoyable, like, kind of entertainment thing. And then it turned into like a money thing, and that's where it becomes like heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I know he's been wrapped up in a lot of stuff. I'm always hesitant to approach when a YouTuber situation because I would have to investigate it fully before I approach it. Because
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
then
You
it's
have
like,
to. I mean, it's different all the time, like
yeah,
per person.
it's like, hey, boss store, you said this nice thing about he on your podcast, but did you know he did this thing to this person, and now that person feels terrible? And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know about that. They're like, oh, well, now I'm gonna go ahead and tell all my friends that that's what you think, and I'm like, okay, I guess you don't have a full time job where where you can
Yeah,
worry about
yeah.
other stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, when it comes to that stuff, once again, it's like for example, like we talked about, like, like YouTubers who will like struggle with these situations, or like when they're out in the public. Uh, I think everyone who's had a controversy, I still follow. Even though I will strongly disagree or not like some of the things they've said, or that created those dramatic situations,
Hmm.
but I still like their content. And I think that's I think the moral issue where I'm currently facing is, like, like the whole Hitler, like, was an artist thing. Like if you saw a painting by Hitler and you're like, that's a nice painting, and someone goes, that's Hitler. You know what I mean? Like, how do you split that up, right?
Yeah,
Because if you have like the worst person on earth who has something that is like artistic in some kind of form of expression, do you judge them together, linked together, or there's no actual answer for that. I,
yeah.
I don't know if there is, but
I think I wish that I could be better about separating the artist from the art. I
mhm,
wish I would definitely wish I was better about that. I'm not as good at it as I wish I was.
yeah,
And there's definitely a case to be made for that, where, people still want to like H.P. Lovecraft, even though he was definitely uh, strong about his beliefs in the time that he was in.
of course, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is also like it's a brainwashing thing. Well, look, I will say, like, for me, my view is very simple. We're all broken, and we're all broken in different ways. When you have that approach, it makes sense of a lot of things in your life, right? So, like, when you see someone who's like messed up in this way, it's like, well, you know what, maybe that person was beaten as a child, maybe that person was raised that way and was brainwashed that way, whatever it is. So you have
Mm-hmm.
sympathy for people's brokenness, right? And then that allows you to, at least, when you see situations like this, you have the ability to not just straight up hate someone for something they did. Let me just give you like more of a detailed uh, example. um, oh my gosh, we just talked about him. What's it called? He did the nudes on Tumblr.
Pro Jared.
Yeah, Pro Jared, for example. When that came out, I was like, dude, like, is it messed up that he cheated on his wife or whatever, right? I'm like, sure, but it's only messed up to his wife. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know his wife. I don't know their relationship. I don't care about
exactly.
that. And the thing is it messed up? Yeah, it's messed up. If I was a girl who's gonna talk to him, I would know and be wary, weary about like that whole situation, worried about that. But that's not ever gonna happen. I'm not a girl. I'm not gonna ever be in a situation like that.
Yeah.
But
It's
I
remember
don't
when
care. Like it's just that stuff that I don't care about because I'm not watching his videos thinking about. I wonder how he is in his relationship with his wife. You know what I mean? Like that.
yeah.
I was never coming to him for that stuff. I liked his opinion on games. I liked his content on games, and I still follow him for that reason. Even though now it's gross that I see this guy's naked body in my head every time I watch his content.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's uh, I remember it confused me to no end that when Tiger Woods was caught cheating on his wife, that he was
Yeah,
apologizing to us. And I get
yeah,
it. I get it. Like on the surface level, oh, he's cheating. That's bad. At
yeah.
the same time, some people, like, I'm not saying this was the case, but some people cheat on their spouse because they were in an abusive relationship that they can't get out of. Some
Hmm.
people, not that that justifies it 100%, but that's not our relationship. We don't know what's going on. It's none of our business. If anything, the allegations people should have been serious about were those more serious ones coming out of Pro Jared, not the fact that
Hmm. Yeah.
he was cheating on his wife. And whenever people were coming at it from the angle that he was cheating on his wife, I was just like, well, come on, man. That's not us. We don't know what's going on there. They could. You see what? You ever see the movie Marriage Story?
Yeah.
You saw that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That is the first movie I cried at. Anyway, um,
No, dude, I saw it and I was just upset because, well, look, my approach on marriage is like you're all in, and
yeah,
to many people, they don't know what that looks like. So,
yeah.
like for me, I was pissed off throughout all of Marriage Story because I was like, at this point, you can find any fucking reason to divorce someone. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Like when
And
he went to the court and he said, "Oh yeah," she makes that offhanded comment about how she was tipsy. He used that to his advantage because she was
yeah,
doing stuff to him, and that
of course,
becomes
yeah.
ammo. Everything becomes ammo. People just,
Mhm.
it's crazy, man.
Exactly. Yeah. And but that's what it is. And that's, like when and this is sort of getting into marriage, which is a little odd, but it's a good example to put out there, is that like um in our first 2 years of marriage, me and Kate, we would have really bad arguments because we were learning how to argue and as a married couple, right? Because you're facing these situations. But
Yeah,
then the thing that helped us out the most was that just being open about things and understanding that, hey, look, right now I'm pissed off, I'm upset, and literally I'm seeing myself gather this ammunition to use against you. And by saying that out loud, it diffuses the situation where I'm like, well, she now knows what I'm planning and how I'm thinking, right?
oh
But
wow.
once again, this is a good way to approach all other situations as well. If you're open to like allowing your ignorance to show, people will see that as a weakness and allow themselves to sympathize and actually, go down to your level, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
So, and that's like the Pro Jared thing, for example. Like, I didn't care, and everyone's like, "Look, he did this," and I was like, "Is it messed up?" Yeah, dude, that's messed up, dude. It's like, what are you doing, cheating on your wife? But first off, he's not my friend. I'm not gonna go to him and say, "Dude, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? He's just a person that I just know does this, blank, right? And I don't care about that stuff. I don't mean it in an offensive way. I just don't know the guy to that level, to that extent. And that applies to every other dramatic situation on YouTube. Like it's just that some things are, yeah, look, dude, the thing, if that was, here's the evidence, here's that, whatever. Okay, yeah, that's some really, you got to deal with that, and that's a cop related situation,
yeah,
and it changes my view on the person, right? But once again, like if you throw that out there, and then all of a sudden those people who accused him deleted their Twitter accounts, and there's something shady there. I
yeah,
can't say that I'm going to view the guy as, something that he's not when
yeah.
the evidence disappeared, kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
So
and
I
it's
don't
a
know.
slippery, again, it's another slippery slope because if someone comes to you tears in their eyes and they're like, I was abused in this way, you want to take that seriously. But at the same time, I can't damn this guy. I have to look
Mhm.
into this. I have to make sure. And if nothing comes up, then I'm sorry, but I can't crucify him. I
Well,
understand
that's
you're
what I was going to
hurting.
say.
Maybe there's a version of the truth that's correct, but I can't crucify this guy when I don't have any physical evidence to go off of or multiple cases. And I don't wish that on Charlie and Chai either. I know those are the two people that accused him. I know what I
Mhm.
heard, that they got these malicious, awful death threats. Some people would argue that they're getting what they deserve because they tried to slander Jared. But at the end of the day, I can't really picture any person that I would wish that on, to have the entire weight of the internet coming down on you like that.
Mhm.
I can't
Yeah.
picture anyone I would wish that on, man.
Well, no, dude. I mean, the thing is this, like, for example, like when I heard about this, the first thing I heard was a thing. Like, I was like, wait, what? Like, and then
Hmm.
I couldn't help but dig a little bit. But once again, what does me digging even mean, right? Like, you can Photoshop anything these days. You
Yes.
can, I mean, the problem with this guy too is that like the way, and once again, I'm talking about problems on both sides, not just his side. But for example, you can't just take someone's word for like, hey, are you 18? You know what I mean? Like, that's not
Yeah.
something you can,
Fair.
like, if you're out in public, in other words, like in a public forum, you need some kind of way to back up your claims here, because if someone digs and just manipulates things a specific way, it's going to look terrible. And that's what cancel culture is. It's not about like what the court said. It's about what a majority of people can spread and have people believe, right?
Right.
Now, I'm not saying he was or wasn't. At first I was like, if he is, that's messed up, dude, and you're probably going to go to jail. If you're not, well, that's messed up, dude. You should, like, I don't know how you got into a place where like these people are doing this to you. Like, I don't know. I didn't know if he was like a bad guy that people hated and they wanted to tear down in that way. But the point is, once again, like it's explosive on social media. Like, if something
Yep.
like that happens, it spreads like wildfire. And then if it's, for example, that all spread like wildfire, and then once they found out, like he did his video where it's like, here's the receipts.
Yeah.
That video came out, there was almost nothing like trending on that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing there.
Even
Like,
if, even though he's
everyone's like,
telling the
dude, I don't
truth.
care. Yeah, and people are like, dude, I don't care about this. Who is this guy? I forgot about this guy. I'm moving on to the next person that's trending on Twitter right now.
Yeah, I forgot about. Even though he's correct, even though he's proved his case or whatever as much
Yeah.
as he can, I still think that he's an offender because of what. There's a permanent amount of damage that comes with that. You can't throw those accusations around lightly. And at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
I would say I think his response was about as perfect as it could have been. He's like, okay, I wanted to interact in this, mature way.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, my intent was neutral, but his status couldn't be completely removed from the situation. Now, on some level, I want to call bullshit where it's like, you can't engage sexually with a guy and then just play the card of, well, he's a YouTuber and I'm not, and I don't know any better. There's only so
Yeah.
much you can do with that. But at the same time, there's only so much neutrality he can take with it. So I thought his apology, where he said no matter how neutral the intent was, I can only do it this much, was good. So as long as he goes forward and says, hey, I'm not gonna mess around with my fans romantically, I think that's the best approach you can take. And man, he's aged like 10 years.
But I will say that, like, I mean, to bring it back to like YouTube, um, I feel like that stuff needs to live off of YouTube. And the reason
Hmm.
I say that is because like his defense videos, for example, I don't know if they're still up. I'm sure they are, the receipts at least. But like, it hurt him a lot at one point to respond, like, as in like, I'm in shock of this, like he was like sort of emotionally dealing with it. And then he released the receipts afterwards. And it was like one of those things where it's like, dude, like, you needed just the receipts video and that's it, like, at that point. Because that stuff can live off of Twitter. For example, let's say someone messes up on YouTube in whatever dramatic way, and then they have to apologize. The way you apologize is everything, right? You've seen
Yep.
apology videos that destroy the person. What people want to see is, one, just admitting you were wrong. Remember Philip Mewson, was it? Remember?
Ah, right, right. The IGN guy.
Yeah, that guy, I pity so much, dude. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I went from
I
disliking him like strongly to all of a sudden realizing, dang, dude, he's just a kid who does
Yeah,
not believe in himself,
yeah,
and he need, and this is what happened. But the
yeah.
problem is that it all comes down to his apology.
He
He had
mishandled
a
it.
non-apology.
He
Like, it was,
mishandled it. He mishandled it like 3 times, and it's terrible. He did some crappy stuff, but at the end of the day, he didn't murder anyone. He didn't.
Of course, yeah.
Nothing
I think the
sexual
guy
was
deserves an
involved.
extra chance. At least as in like like to be back into like I guess in a
I've in,
normal state of social media. You know what I mean? Where you could
I've
just use
invited
Twitter
him.
without having hate.
Yeah, I've invited him to come on here,
Yeah. No, no. I mean,
and
that's one of those things that like I think he's doing it right now in the sense that he did fix his apology after like the third apology, and
yeah,
he's just disappeared, which I think you have has to be a part of the process too because the internet forgets. Um,
does it
they
forget?
say they
Because a
don't.
popular
They
phrase I hear is that the internet does not
It
forget.
doesn't
Does it?
forget,
Does
yeah, but the internet as in like historically like is like are the receipts online, sure, if you google it, right? But yeah, I'd say the people on the internet forget
hmm
because dude, you know how much drama, like we have drama, drama channels, right? How if you go back in their history to like I don't know, a year minimum, you're gonna see stuff on there, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then you'll
yeah,
find that person, you're like, oh, that person just kept going, that
dude,
person just moved on. You
dude,
know what I mean?
Snoop Dogg killed a person.
There you go, dude. Like it's like people will get away with, a lot more than they realize because the thing is you're not going to continue to trend. It's a spike and then deal with that and then move on. For example, like my thing is this, like I'm very against the you have to apologize for the rest of your life mentality. You know what I mean? That
Most definitely.
society it's extremely I think once again volatile to think that way that someone deserves like someone who messed up deserves to apologize to you every single chance they get that they
Yeah,
have. It's extremely dangerous because it flips it around where all of a sudden that person's a slave to society, that person is
yeah.
you know
You
what I
look
mean,
at
like he's in
yeah.
chains, right? Like
You look
so
up
it's
any
extreme.
video that Philip Mace. How do you pronounce his last name?
Mucin
I
it's like
think it's Musin.
MIUCN or something like
I
that.
think it's Musin. You look up any video he does, all the comments are just like berating him still, and
Oh yeah.
I get the anger.
I am,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I
but
was gonna say. I understand it. Like I'm not, surprised by it so much because everyone, the thing is everything that people want to hear from someone who messes up is, hey, I messed up. I don't know. Admit your ignorance, admit that, what you were actually trying to do, and act like don't act, but like you understand that your audience is intelligent and they know what you're doing.
right.
They're not going to fall for these tricks where it's like they can just read through like oh, you're reading a script
Yeah,
that someone said is the safest route. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
people want to hear like an honest down to earth apology where it's like, dude, I messed up, man. And, it was
right.
my first time in a big gig and
Exactly.
I didn't believe in myself. If he said that, I think he would have gone way more followers, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, across the board,
yeah.
because that
Unless you're
kind of
some
hurt people can
YouTubers,
relate to. Yeah.
then you might not want to. Your audience might not have that intelligence, and then you
Yeah.
just gotta
Yeah.
hope for the best. But yeah, no, a better apology would have gone a long ways for him. But at the same time, you have all of that pressure coming on you. And I'm not saying forgive the offenders or Mr. Anime, Mr.
Yeah.
Anime, yeah, what he did.
Yeah.
And but you know, plagiarizing a review, that's shitty. But live and let live, man.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it really comes down to like human nature on YouTube, in my opinion. Like it really, it's people who are not acting, like they're that human nature side of them. But when you mess up, people need to see that side of you, right? They don't. For example, like almost everything I do is scripted at this point because, as you can tell, I talk a lot, right? So this way, I keep it down to a small amount and to the point. But if I need to apologize about something I did, I don't know. I hopefully never have to. But if I had to, I know that I can't script it out like that because it comes off like I'm reading something and not
Yeah,
really saying it. That's why I think some of the most popular videos when it comes to those situations are people who just start playing, recording the camera. And then, of course, people make fun of the videos because it's like they're all the same. It's people who are hurt and, saying, oh, dude, I'm sorry I got caught or whatever it is, right?
yeah. Well, here's the thing. They wouldn't apologize. Here's the thing. There's behavior that needs to be corrected. That's why they're not apologizing if they got caught. Okay? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah.
it's the action that matters afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. And they are, I can't tell you how many times I dread seeing that one video that has a simplistic title that just says, I'm sorry. And the thumbnail is them with these red puffy eyes and they're just like being honest in the camera, and sometimes those videos have
Yeah.
to happen, sometimes they don't. But it's something that I wish we could just all fucking chill and review shit, you know.
Of
I
course.
wish we
Yeah.
could all just review. I don't know what you'd have to apologize for. Like, they're like,
I
I'm
can't
sorry,
think of anything.
I didn't
Well,
review the grip the right way.
no, but
Sorry.
I will say though, there are moments, like for example, like where I'll review something and then a revision of that product is out, but I didn't know. I wasn't notified via email. You know, like how you can do their newsletters and stuff. Like I have
Mhm.
all their newsletters. So if there's a change or something, a new product, I can know. But sometimes people will update their products and not say anything because they're small companies or they're companies from China or like across, like some other country. And I don't know that that happened. And then people come to my old review and they say, dude, you missed this part of the review and you have to apologize about this. Everyone's going to see this video and not buy the product. And I'm like, wait, I don't get it. And then I'll look and I'll realize, oh, they updated this product so it fixed the problems that I mentioned in a video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then people are thinking that I'm bashing it incorrectly when I'm not bashing the product. It's just that, it's like, hey, dude, you're reviewing, you're talking about a revision that happened in 2019 when I reviewed that in 2017. You know what I mean? Like that can happen, and of course it can harm, because it's SEO. It's like, for example, a lot of my channel is very SEO heavy. In other words, I'm like, how would people find my stuff? Like any big YouTuber, you'll see the most. In my opinion, I cannot stand it. I apologize to them for saying it that way, but I just can't stand when a YouTuber has like a generic title and a random thumbnail that does nothing but make you go, "What is this?" Right? Because really, that comes off as in like it's like a privilege thing. It comes off like we have, you know, at least like what is it? You have to have over 100,000 followers who will click on whatever I make, right? I don't work that way. I work with the opposite. I work with like, who's looking for this? Like
Yeah.
when I finish a video, I'm like, who's looking for this? Like, is the title of the video the best way to play the Switch Lite in handheld mode, or is the title of the Switch the controller, right? Like the controller I'm reviewing or whatever.
Yeah,
So I think of it that
not
way.
just
Yeah,
the audience you already have, but cultivating that new audience, not just appealing to this niche. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, I am tired of people just, putting their open palms on their cheeks and screaming and having a red arrow that points to a red circle and saying, "How many times did I die to this boss? XD."
yeah.
Uh,
And it
yeah.
works. It works, I'm sure, for them. But like the thing is, like I personally don't click those videos at all. Like if I see a video and I'm like, it's like I'm like, what is this? Like, it's so mysterious. You have to click to see what it. I don't
Ugh.
like that personally. It's just
Yeah.
I don't go for it.
There
But
is
if it's like,
definitely an art. There's an art to having cliffhangers and stuff like that, but it does get
yeah,
to scumbag levels when it comes to thumbnails and titles, where it's like, oh, alternate ending to this game, and you click on it, it's just like one different line of dialogue. You're like, oh, come
yeah.
on, that's not what you actually mean.
It's because we went through this kind of thing where YouTube try to imitate the vloggers, not the blog journalists. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, The Verge is the one that I think is extremely guilty of this. Where The Verge, The Verge, right?
Yeah, they're good at making PCs.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they remember they started off, and when they started, they were like, "Hey, look, you see Gizmodo and Engadget, we need to be them, but better, right? Because of course they're your competition, you want to do better." And they're literally competing for money at that point, advertising dollars.
Mhm.
So they started The Verge and they try to be as fancy and as good as possible, right? They have the right staff and everything. And then they wanted to switch off of from being bloggers to being journalists, right? And I think they actually did a decent job at it. But the way that looks is that they did like an essay for the iPhone reviews. Do you remember those back then? Like it was like a huge magazine layout that's like thousands of words, like
Mm.
intricate, thoughts all throughout. And really, no one's going to use a phone in the way that they're describing the review of that phone, right? So what they went with, instead of reviewing a product, they went with more of like a narrative, right? Like, what's the narrative? Like, hey, I'm this person, and this is what I like, and I don't like this. Like it's very like narrative-y, I guess is the word.
And maybe
But
just
the
kind of
point is
turning
that
them into idols, and where it's like
exactly.
trying to turn them into personalities when they should just be reviewing the product.
But my point is this, like, I'm like, dude, I'm reading through like half an essay, and I'm like, I don't get it. Is this good or bad? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if I leave, that's not a review anymore, and it's not. But it is. It's what it sells itself
Yeah.
as.
Is
And then
isn't
that
yeah.
went into YouTube. You'll
Isn't
see
it
people review products where it's like, it's them sitting in a chair in a beautiful set, and it's like, what is a phone? Like, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
yeah.
And
Oh
it's a
yeah.
full 13, 17-minute
Oh
video.
my god. I know
But
exactly
and
what you
there's
mean.
nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's just a specific type of content. It's just that
Well, to
it's
me,
not what
well to
not a
me it
review.
is.
It's you
To
know what I
me,
mean? Like it's
to me it is.
mhm,
And you said you like Angry Joe, and I get that. But I turn on. It's like, okay, he's gonna review Pillars of Eternity, for example. I open up
mhm.
the video. First 20 seconds, he's in this cloak going through a
Oh yeah.
valley, and he's like, "Oh, it's like the sacred scrolls," and I'm just like, "Ah, shit! It's gonna take forever for him to get to the fucking point. I'm gonna fast
Exactly.
forward
Yeah.
or exit."
Exactly. And once again,
What is a
that's part.
phone?
Exactly. But that's you see what I'm saying, right? Like
I
he
do,
definitely
yeah,
adds like his thing is like he's like set and props and pieces like that, right? Like that's what
yeah,
his thing is for the beginning. He just goes a little too far with it in my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
agree
get
with that.
to, yeah, I
I
could
love
talk
when he
to,
talks
yeah,
to the points of the video. Like he goes, "What they do right is this." I love that, and then he talks about the wrong, right? Like that's what I want to know about because I'm not there to, because the thing is, if you know the author, like people who know, oh, this is this author, I love him. Let me read his work, right? Because it's a work of art at that point. It's not just like a review. There's nothing wrong with it. Once again, like I said, but it's not my style. But I am seeing people imitate that style on YouTube, right? Like you're seeing that them approach it with like instead of here's the layout of the video, it's more like unbox therapy where it's like, hey, look, this guy's my employee. Let me talk to him and whatever your name is, like, like talk about this and then it turns into like a 17-minute video where
right,
we don't know if that product is good or not, but you had a blast with it even if it's bad. Does that make sense? You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
I
it's
think
just
that
like
I think that falls into people
oh,
who are.
vague.
I think
It's
that
vague.
falls into people who are able to step outside themselves and say, "Hey, I like this thing, but here's the objective reasons why the average consumer right might not."
Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like
And
that.
at that point, you can make a 20-minute video if that's the core, right? If that's what it really is. Because, for example, like with like iPhone reviews, now iPhone reviews, I mean, dude, it's the same thing. Everyone knows every smartphone at this point is doing the same thing with smart, like, adjusting to the competition, right? Like adding small upgrades. Like that's all it is. But instead of someone being honest and saying, like, let's be honest, these phones are boring. Like you're not going to do that because you want to continue to have the relationship with the companies who make these phones. So the issue there is that like, is he being extremely vague because he wants to say the biggest problem with this product is this, but I'm going to tell you in a huge essay. So you can't really tell that I mentioned it's a problem. You can just you have to pick it up. You have to be smart enough to pick it up. And once again, there's freaking 12-year-olds, dude. 12-year-olds and younger watching these videos when all they want to know is should I ask for this for my birthday? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
and
because you don't know your audience, like you're like you think it's like the people who read the New Yorker is what I pictured it to look like.
well, here's the thing: anybody with a high quality mic, can pick that up and start reviewing a product, and they don't have the burden of the corporate guy over their shoulder saying, "Get to the point, get to the point." They get to go all out. So, for example, Death Stranding, that might have been compromised because they're like, "We're
Yeah,
just gonna let the art guy do whatever he wants, even if this crazy, thing that not everyone gets." So for Mahler, he's a YouTuber I kind of like. However, his reviews are like 12 different 1 hour videos. Not very good if you wanted to have a job at like, The Verge or someplace where you're just reviewing, doing these quick movie reviews. But
yeah,
for him personally, he can put 12 1 hour videos up there and, that works for him. But it's weird to the average consumer who just wants to look it up and get an opinion. They got to sift through a lot of content that might be biased, that might not have, the hand of a more level-headed mind to organize that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it really comes down to like how people lay out their content, right? In other words, like how does the process of starting a video look like? a lot of the times people are looking at other content and saying, I need to make something more like that. Then all of a sudden you have a ton of people who have similar looking content. Like
Yeah.
mine, for example, is very cookie cutter. You know what I think I can even compare my content to is like 90s infomercials. And I only say that because like sometimes I'm like, I want to show a use case. You know what I mean? A use case as in like, oh, for example, in the last video, I mentioned a grip that's like one of these Chinese products. Like by that I mean as in like it's cheap. It looks like it was quickly made, and it just rushed out the door. The packaging is garbage. There's no brand associated. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah.
cliche kind of stuff. But I was looking specifically for like hours and researching for days for something that suited the use case that I needed, which was a what's the word I'm looking for? A versatile grip for the Joy-Cons. So if I have people that come over, hey, 4 people are over. Well, here, look, all our Joy-Cons are charged up, and you can use them together in a grip, right? So 2 per person. But what if it's 8 people? Oh, okay. Well, you can do that too. But should I put 8 grips out and 4 grips for you see the problem there? Like it's a very tiny, almost impossible to explain situation that hasn't happened yet. But like if it did happen, now I'm prepped for it. But the point is that like that was the use case for a product that I wanted to look for. Guess what? I found it. And that product is what I mentioned in that video with that use case. So if you have friends, hey, guess what? You don't have to have 8 grips. Just have two, have these 4 and you can use them in that way or whatever it is, right? So but my point is that it's such a niche kind of thing, that thought process that I can only associate with myself because that's how I am, right? I like looking for things that solve tiny problems. This monitor, for example, it's on a wooden like riser, but it's too wide for the riser, so it's gonna fall back off the little riser. So I found a little clamp that rotates and and it lifts it up, and now it holds my monitor, and no one knows that I spent like 4 hours looking for a little specific item that solves one tiny issue, right? But that's
Yeah.
my mentality, and that's what creates the niche of the product of the videos that I make for the products that I feature, right?
I think that mindset helps your videos a lot. It keeps you off the rail of making this 45-minute video about like wearing a cloak and saying, "What is a Nintendo Switch grip?" And then you go on like this Indiana Jones parody where you take the Switch grip out of off the Golden Idol shrine, and instead it's like, "Nope, he's just gonna do what's is not going to be this cringy YouTuber. He's just going to do what he's supposed to and give these clear, concise. He's got the nice wooden table with the with
Oh
the
yeah,
camera on it."
that's the biggest part is like B-roll at that point. But yeah, and once again, it comes down to like, hey, these videos. Oh, and another part, just so you know, this is something I should have probably mentioned more online too, is that like, although a majority of everything I'm doing now is very Nintendo accessories, like those are the 2 big words. I even have like I've gained a search SEO term on YouTube where people are using my it came from a box on their tags because they want to be associated with Nintendo Switch accessories. That's how bad it is, right? But the point is that my mentality when I started this was like, I think I'm going to switch it off from PC gaming accessories because first off, I could not afford the keyboards. Like the keyboards, I remember like I did it one time and I was like, dude, like we don't have enough to pay the bills. Like I had to find like,
Yeah.
like I had to find money. And then I was like, okay, I paid it, but there's no way that's going to fly in a relationship with kids and everything too, right? You have to choose one, and it clearly is not going to be keyboards. So I was like, I can't afford this anymore. So I stopped doing keyboard reviews, even though I think I got to the peak level of keyboard reviews. I was like so proud of them, the way I laid them out and everything. People loved them as well. I'm not trying to speak highly of myself, but I'm just saying that like most people, when they get to that level and they peak and and they get some really good views and they following, they continue that route, and that's what happened with Nintendo Switch specifically, right?
Mhm.
But my mentality was, let me do all gaming and do accessories across the board because you literally will never run out of content. Like, like that use
Yeah.
case I told you applies to PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch. It applies to Stadia. It apply, like all these kind of ways of how you want to use something to create something, right?
Yeah,
Like a,
that's
like a
what
little
I
kid.
was telling Odin was there is definitely an advantage like that channel Star Wars only. There is an advantage to having a specific channel that only goes over the exact niches of one specific thing. But uh, even if you were even if it seemed like you were charted on a course to do PC stuff, it might have. it did you a lot of well to say, hey, you know what, this is pretty expensive. Let me break off. I can do other accessories. It's not as bad to get these plastic things for the Switch.
Yeah. And like once again, that goes into SEO, right? Like people are looking for this stuff specifically. And the idea of keeping it like vague is not vague, but like, like you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, right? I didn't pigeonhole myself because I could just literally bounce out of Nintendo Switch stuff the next day and just go into Stadia. You know what I mean? Like, because there's nothing in my channel that says I only do this. Like the name, like Nintendo for some reason is really good at getting a ton of people who will name their channel, like something Nintendo related. Like remember Nintendo, right? Nintendo. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Well, I want to see like Dreamcast. Remember Dreamcast? I forgot his name. Dreamcast guy, I guess. Is it a Dreamcast guy? I forgot. But my point is that like he doesn't do Dreamcast all the time now. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah.
a genius to think that that's going to happen.
I mean,
So
Markiplier's name was he wanted to do skits where he like cloned just used other takes of himself, and look where that went. So
exactly, yeah. I mean, it's a good name. Like it's just a unique name in that sense. But um yeah, so I'm narrowing it down now. So like a lot of the reason I'm doing like so many Nintendo Switch accessories. First off, I keep looking for them all the time, and I keep finding them, which is very funny. But also, it's leading into the next gen of consoles too. Like I'm gonna be talking about, okay, so you like your controller, how can you enhance your controller? I've tried grips, but the problem with the grips is that they can hit the edge of the controller, or they can do this, and they can help hurt in this way, and which ones are the right ones, things like that, right? But then apply that to 3 consoles, right? So maybe the future videos on the channel next year might be something along the lines of like, which is the best controller and what can they learn from one another, and how can you enhance one to work like the best one, right? So things like that.
I thought it was funny how you're talking about the Steam controller earlier, because that was like the most oddly feeling comfortable controller, but not quite. It was like alien and comfortable at the same time. That thing slid into my hands like it was butter, and
Yeah.
it clicked in all these satisfying ways. But at the end of the day, there was something weird about it. And I think it was just the fact that it had discs instead of D-pads. Yeah, we were talking about I think just not having reviews be long-winded, not having skits involved, maybe something
Yeah.
to that effect.
Well, I mean, like that's just I guess my point with that would have been more along the lines of like, when content is imitating other content, is it really yours to begin with? You know what I mean? Like, as in, there, for example, Angry Joe, like he's not doing anything unseen or unheard of. Yes, on
Yeah,
the platform, but like props and like that kind of comedic timing and like that kind of comedy aspect to it. It's very much like Mad TV kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like it
yeah,
feels like they're moving on to skit, and there's an audience for that, but it's not completely brand new. It was groundbreaking in the sense that he put it on this platform, right? But he stuck with it, and that's his thing. That's his like, you always expect props. Like that's literally what he'll say. Hey, we can't finish the video because we need to get the props. You know what I mean? Like that's a part of his DNA on there. But it's not like there's another YouTuber who's doing that, because if someone else comes in and does the same thing, they're gonna say, "Hey, dude, that's Angry Joe's. Like, you're just imitating Angry Joe." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's and once again, as YouTubers, I think really like the a part of the hustle, a part of like the grind is like, hey, uh, how are you gonna become more popular on this platform? Because that's the truth. People don't want to say it, but it's really comes down to like, how do you become more popular, right? That's what an influencer is. Like, you continue to amass a following, and it becomes a big thing. The difference is that, like, of course, like I'm not going to move my audience to a podcast and then abandon this platform for a podcast because I have like, what is it, 3 to 5 sponsors per episode. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, who are you trying to slight there, huh?
Well, that's actually true. I don't, dude. The thing, it's such a painful thing because I love their old content. I can tell where they got their inspiration from, and it's stuff that like I liked as well. But like it comes off like these people are lying to us when they say, "Hey, I make videos for you guys because I love doing this and it's fun, and I do it for you guys because you guys like it too." But then they abandon it because of money. And it's like, wait, did you ever do this for anything but the money? Or did it turn into that?
Yeah.
And it's like Lord of the Rings. You're like, I'm keeping this ring and I'm going to do good things with it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but it
uh,
must also be a big burden off their mind because think about how hard it is for you to do a Switch unboxing video versus a 100K celebration video, you know? Because then they're like, oh, I can make just as much money off not cutting all this footage together. It's just a fraction of the work, and I still get to inject my personality to it. Not that it's the correct thing to do, but it must ease a lot of the burden on their end.
yeah. I mean, it's different approaches for everyone, I guess is the idea. But like, I've always seen it as in like, my mentality, at least on YouTube, is like, I don't have enough time to worry about the video I just released. I have to move on to the next one because I'm already behind
Yeah,
and I'm always running out of time. Like, so if a video does well, the only way I know is because my wife will tell me, "Hey, that video is doing well," or I'll have someone tell, say, "Oh, I'm, this whatever commenter or whatever, or viewer or whatever it is." I didn't know I had a video that reached 1 million views until probably like half a year later, like half a year or like a year later, because
really.
yeah, I don't like looking at numbers because it gets to your head and then you feel like, oh look, that's how you get those fallouts, right? Where people all of a sudden think that you're someone, like you're something, like you're a celebrity or whatever it is. And once you think that way, you have this kind of ease. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. My audience is gonna wait on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and ego.
and my mentality, yeah, yeah, ego. And a big part of it for me is like, dude, I'm behind, and I know people are gonna be upset, and I know people are gonna say, hey, oh, you're great, but you need to make more videos. I get that a lot, and it kills me. Like I don't really let comments get to me, but the inspirational aspect of it does. Where I'm like, dude, you're right. I should be making 2 videos a week. But it's a personality thing. I'm one of those perfectionists where it kills to that point, right?
Yeah, and that unease is what will keep you um, going steady. You know, getting comfortable. That's not good. You want to have that
Yeah, I'd
unease.
rather just, yeah, like the videos that I'm making right now, I want them to be like, if someone stumbles upon them, they'll enjoy the full video. You know what I mean? Like it's not torturous to see the full video is my mentality. Like not my mentality, my goal. Like I don't want someone to just say, dude, like this is what the hell, man? This is 10 accessories I don't want to know about. Like that,
I'm
that's
not sure
like
why they clicked on the video then.
exactly, yeah.
10
Which is, by the
10
way, I
Switch
do get comments like
accessories.
that. I
10
get
Switch
I
accessories
get
you might want, and then they click on it and they're like, "Why am I hearing about 10 Switch accessories?" Well, that's because that's what was in the title, man.
Yeah, exactly. Unless I said, like that. I always try to think of like, hey, if I was one of those channels I make fun of, how would you name this video, right? And a lot of the idea is like show a blurred image of the products with a question mark pointing at them, and then put, "Is this the best thing ever made?" As the title or some crap like that, and just put like a logo of whatever. Let's say it's PlayStation, it has like the PlayStation logo or whatever, right? But now even bigger, some of those bigger YouTubes are starting to use titles the way that they should, at least SEO wise, because you really lose a lot. You lose a lot by having a title. Casey Neistat, once again, like a huge, one of the biggest bloggers on the platform. At his peak, all his thumbnails and titles were just the most generic thing. Like if you wanted to look for something specific, you can't find it. Like if you go, hey, where's that one video where he went to Peru? Unless Peru is somewhere on his tags, which he didn't really tag videos, how would you ever find that? The idea of losing something on the internet is so much more scarier than you losing something under your couch.
Hmm. Yeah, it's you always realize that where at the end of the day, you and me could make fun of those red arrows pointing to red circle thumbnails all day long, but
Oh, but they work.
they
Yeah.
they they do continue to work.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's once again, I don't think I did mention this, but like a majority of your viewers, like if I look in my stats, which once again, I don't want to because the numbers, YouTube does this thing where like it tells you daily how you're doing, right? Like it'll tell you, hey, you're doing way better than last week, right? As an encouragement, right? Like keep
Mhm.
going. But then at one point, it's like a business, right? Like where it's like, hey, you can only profit and make more money for so long before you have to innovate, before you have to do something to push that spike up, right?
Hmm.
And then you're going to start seeing a lot of red on YouTube, and it says you're performing 33% worse than you did last week on this day. You know what I mean? So it's extremely depressing. But like, if you look at those numbers, what was I associating this with? Like, oh yeah, with other YouTubers, I guess. But the numbers show that like a majority of the people who watch your videos just stumbled upon it. You know what I mean? Like, it was in trending on their LGTV, who opened up YouTube for the first time. They just wanted to play something to see how it would look on their TV, or just to check out the app, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll never come back. Like, that's a majority of our viewers. Retention, like, like people who stay are extremely rare, even though, I guess numbers wise they're not, but I find them to be extremely rare, because that means that they actually want to follow you and see your next stuff. Like, that's extremely, like, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I can't even get some of my friends to watch. I don't think I could get Kate, my wife, to watch all the stuff that I make, and I don't want her to, because unless you're into it, why would you want to put someone through that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny where you see where some of these stats come from. Like Overwatch, lots of these online games, they get most of their profits from what they call whales, just people who buy a bunch of microtransactions, and only
Oh
a
yeah.
I could be dead wrong on this, but from what I've heard, it's only a small sliver of those profits actually come from just consistently different players coming in.
Yeah, I mean, that's how mobile games work out, where it's a majority of like, oh, this game's free, and you realize it's not. It's like, literally, like, you pay for, like, a majority of things that you end up craving as you play the game, right? And yeah, but once again, I think I think at one point everyone's going to be buying like loot boxes. You know what I mean? Like some form of loot boxes,
Mm.
where the idea is that, like, hey, look, I like this game, and I want to um, uh, positively push them in the direction of, like, hey, continue doing this, and here's some money, right? Um, that's literally the only way. In other words, like, it's a free game. You lose nothing by buying a season pass for like these games now, right? If you actually like the game, because what you're doing is you're supporting that company and having them continue to think, hey, look, they like what we're doing. Not charging them to to play the game is helping, and blah 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 blah. And kids get access to it and they grow into it, whatever it is.
Yeah, just and can't kick yourself too much for where your money goes. You know about the Foxconn factory, right?
In what sense, though?
The it's like one of those sweatshops, like just
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I know it's a sweatshop, suicides and all that, the nets and everything. As in, like, what are you saying? Like, as in, like, they don't have to be there, kind of thing, or?
yeah, yeah, like that.
Well, yeah. I
Or
mean, I'm like that too, but I think, to a certain extent, it's like I feel, like, it's a privileged way of thinking too, where it's like,
mhm,
it's personally, I'm of the mindset, because of where I am, where if I worked in a let's say, like, a company where the CEO is not someone who I respect and is like talking down to employees and stuff like that, I love the idea in my head of telling that person off in a kind way, of course, and saying, like, I can't work with someone like you. Like, there's something wrong with you, But that's a place of privilege. I don't know how it is in China, where it's like a company like Foxconn can exist. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
where it's like, you guys don't think it's a problem that you're considering putting nets because the suicide rate is so high? Like,
yeah,
you think that solving the problem is putting nets? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's a bigger thing here, right? So
yeah, exactly. It's their knee jerk reaction is to put a net. It's not to give them a living wage or to
exactly, yeah.
change the conditions of the factory. Ooh, 2 hours and 48 minutes. Holy crap.
Yeah, dude.
Uh,
I was
well,
gonna say, like, when I used to do a podcast, really what we would do is just like cut down. I think it was the highest was 3 hours to like 20 minutes.
man, how
But
do
I
you
will
do
say,
that?
though, the good thing about that was that there was content, and you can do, like, cut through the fat. It was I think the mentality, not the mentality, the term we used to use.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate when guests are like easy to talk to, where you could just
No, I
carry
don't
it
mind.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I apologize. I know you've been messaging me on Twitter a lot, but one thing you'll probably notice is that, like, I don't really do social media. Like, I suck at it, because I get so many notifications from work and stuff that, like, I just don't pay attention to my phone. But
Mhm.
I appreciate your patience, man. Thank you so much for not feeling like I'm abandoning you or ignoring you or anything like that. Which it's difficult to come off like the
Hmm.
opposite on social media these days.
Yeah, no, well, that definitely wasn't the vibe I got. I did take it as you have a lot of stuff going on, and that's understandable, And
Yeah, dude,
when,
the newborn thing is killer right now. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie.
exactly. And when you have, man, that newborn, you're gonna have a heck of a story for them. Shortly
Yeah,
after you were born, this pandemic creeped up on us, or
trust
actually,
me, dude.
as they were born, the pandemic was there.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, that story is actually really worth telling in the sense that like the timing, she was born a month early, but if she was born on time, there's a chance I would have not have been, with my wife because of the hospital situation right now.
Oh wow,
So it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
I never even thought about it that way. Are your kids going to be able to handle the stress of their dad being a celebrity?
No way, dude. Well, actually, I think I had my daughter tell them I'm a YouTuber, which the thing is, I don't like people saying, "Oh, you're a YouTuber," you know what I mean? Like, because it comes off like the general mentality I think that people have for YouTubers is that you just It's like cryptocurrency. You know what I mean? Like, you just stumbled into this and you made a killing. That's what some people think, right?
Yeah, that does seem
But
to be it.
because that's what happened with crypto, where it's like, oh dude, this is like digital money, man. I used my allowance and bought it, and now I have a Lamborghini. And people think, dude, that's it's just luck, And to a certain extent, you have to understand what crypto is, how it works, all that stuff, right? And with YouTube, the problem is that a lot of YouTubers, in my opinion, if they left YouTube because it just went away, I don't know how they would make a living. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
what do you do in society if you don't have a background, a career, or something, right? I don't want to know what that feels like if you're a kid who, hey, maybe I don't have to go to college because of the money I'm making on YouTube and sponsors. And maybe I don't have to go, have a career or a normal job. And then they lose YouTube. I don't want to know what that looks like, dude. But
Yeah,
my mentality is that, like, I tell people, I'm a YouTuber with a background in this. You know what I mean? Like, this started off as a hobby. Now it pays for itself. And now it can make money to hire someone. And now it can start a business. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the mentality normal YouTubers have, I don't think.
yeah. They want to view it as an alternative to normal work, and hopefully one day it is. Because I'll tell you right
Yeah, I
now,
mean,
I'm
it'd be
not
great.
very. I hate normal jobs, dude. I'm just not good
Oh,
at
I do
them.
too, dude. Trust me, man.
Yeah,
It's I think, well, the thing is, first off, you'll never um be a better you'll always be a better boss than the bosses you've had, right? Like, it's like your parenting in the sense that, like, if you had an abusive parent, like parent, you're like, I'm never gonna hit my kids. That's the mentality of it, right? Like, because you
hmm,
just, hopefully, I hope, right? Where it's like you want your kids to have a better experience than you did when you were
oh yeah.
growing up too.
That's definitely
And
what my father had with me. Yeah, he wanted to make sure that we had a good. Yeah,
and I think that's the same thing that applies to YouTube in the sense that, like, um, if you had a normal job and then you went on YouTube, you appreciate it much more because you're like, hey, look, I hated the 9 to 5 thing, and now I'm here working instead of 40 hours, I'm working 80 hours a week, and it's like, but I love doing it. I'm the boss here, and I know if I hire someone, I'm not going to treat him like my boss did, who treated me like crap, right? So it's the
yeah,
same kind of thing that you bring onto the platform. And it's one of those things that I think YouTube has to start paying more money into their influencers. I don't like using the word, but their own YouTubers, because
hmm,
the thing is, think of it like this. Amazon, like, they killed off their affiliate program pretty much in the last 3 days, but YouTube can easily adjust the percent of money that what's it called? Oh my gosh, I can't even think right now. The advertising cut
revenue.
by, like, yeah, the revenue by a point percentage, and it would change lives on the platform
Yeah,
during a pandemic, literally by a point percentage. All of a sudden, that could pay a bill. All of a sudden, this person can just quit their job. You know what I mean? Like, but they don't do that. Why? Because YouTube doesn't really make the kind of money I think that Google wants them to make yet. But then that comes down to, like, the richness
yeah,
of the whole thing.
yeah. A lot of it is it would mean so little to them, and it would do so much for those influencers. But lots of times when these companies get rich enough, it's just kind of they become so stale. All they know how to do is make more of the same. I
Yeah, of
think.
course. Which is, by the way, why I love Steam. Like, I love Steam. I love Valve because they're personally owned. Like, they're not public, so you don't have to worry about like the idea that like they're doing something they don't want to do. Like Blizzard. Blizzard's just going downhill. I love all their games, but they're just continually going downhill. It just feels like, you can feel Activision in their moves.
Hmm. Yeah, you can, especially with that Warcraft crap going on with the Warcraft 3.
Yeah, no, it's so many wrong moves that they shouldn't be making. So
Whew. All right, man. Well, thanks for being on for sure. This is going to be
yeah,
a hell of
no
a thing
problem,
to
dude.
edit.
Appreciate you. All right, man. Have a good night then. All right.
You as well.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.